Big revolution which is coming, or we're in the midst of a big revolution?
I guess at its core, I've always believed that art, creativity, and media have the ability to help translate a lot of real-world issues.
When my first check came, my dad thought that I'd go to jail. I've done something incredibly wrong on the internet.
I think creator is like a bit like a magician, right? In old days, you used to do some tricks and earn money, right?
I think a fundamental thing that we sort of miss to set context, right, is why building content in 2025 is really important, right? While of course AI is coming, but actually the next big opportunity is something which is very obvious, which is everybody will need to build their own distribution. Like, because AI is also disrupting.
Welcome to the next episode of the next big opportunity. Today we're going to talk about the creative economy. Creative economy today is, or creators economy, which has going from $250 billion to $500 billion by 2027, as per the report by Goldman Sachs. Globally, there are about 50 million creators who earn more than $100,000 every year. They are called professional creators, so to speak. India is going through its own wave. Indian creator economy is about $25 billion, expected to explode in the next 5 years. India has one of the lowest cost of data, which is 68 cents for 1 GB. We have huge consumption of social content in tier 3, tier 1 town. The explosion of mobile and internet users is going from 450 to about 600, 700 million users in the next 3 years. So we're seeing a massive amount of new field coming about. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how India can create 1 million founders or entrepreneurs who can earn minimum $1 a year through this impact, and that will then lead to a $1 trillion economy in 10 years. So I'm very excited to host the four amazing creators who have different profile today and talk about the next bigger opportunity in this episode. I think we have built capabilities on, we're able to create global products, we're able to sell, market, and scale companies of from anywhere from 1 million up to $1 billion plus in revenue now. I think therefore through this podcast our mission is to evangelize where the opportunities are. And today I'm going to talk about 4 amazing people in this room, and a topic which I am also learning as I speak, which is on the creator economy. Just to give you some numbers on that, creator economy by a Goldman report is $250 billion today in 2024. It is expected to reach $500 billion in 2027, so double in 3 years, which is about 25-26% CAGR growth in 3 years. There are about 50 million serious creators in the world. Professionally, at least in the global standard, is that somebody who can earn $100,000 a year through creator economy or as a creator qualifies as a professional creator. There are, of course, a lot of long tail of creators, which are about 200 million creators in the world totally. India is seeing a massive revolution because of few fundamental reasons. India is one of the lowest cost of data. It is 68 cents per GB. Tier 3, Tier 4 town consumption of social content has really increased. We have about 448 million internet users, mobile users put together. They're going to grow to $700 million in the next 2-3 years, or 700 million users, and we'll touch billion in maybe 10 years. And the engagement is increasing through various entertainment content, education content. So there's a big revolution which is coming, or we're in the midst of a big revolution. And that opportunity put together actually give a lot more in the hands of a creator. So if you are somebody who has been a creator from a young age, which some of here, 4 people you see here are like that, or even in older, where you have not used your creative skills for a long time, but you believe you can have something to offer to the world in various ways, I think you should try at it. And maybe you can earn money for it, or you can do it for philanthropic reasons, right? You can educate people. There are a lot of young people that are coming up. So we're going to learn more during this episode with 4 gentlemen. With that, we'll start with introductions. So thank you very much for flying from Delhi in the morning, Ankur.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Manav.
And Ankur Warikoo, I'm sure all of you who consume a lot of YouTube will know him. He is a entrepreneur turned creator, both in fact. Ankur, why don't you give a little background on yourself?
Sure. I turned entrepreneur in 2009. I've been running startups for the last 15, 16 years now. And incidentally, during COVID, also took up content seriously, never knew what would happen. And here I am today. So spend time between my startup, webveda.com, and content creation.
Perfect. And Avanti, thank you for flying from Bombay. You've been here well rested. You came here last evening.
Yes.
And Avanti has an interesting profile. I was reading upon her, went to Harvard, alongside did a course in Berklee School of Music. And then she turned her, art, profession, understanding of business, education, all into a creator economy. And would love to know more about you, Avanti.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the kind introduction. I guess at its core, I've always believed that art, creativity, and media have the ability to help translate a lot of real world issues, right? So if you're talking about education or health or business or whatever that is, there's one way to speak to an audience that is in those industries and has that knowledge, but a completely different bent is by being able to emotionally connect with someone beyond just the intellect, right? And so I think the content space is this beautiful gap where you can use conversation, in our case, a lot of collaboration, media, entertainment, and it is that blend like you were talking about, right? Education and entertainment. And I've been a singer-songwriter, performing artist, and creator for the past few years. And a lot of what we focus on is how do you make different topics that are in the social impact space more accessible and use this as a medium for awareness, community building, and inspiring creativity.
Yeah, I love few of your, reels which you do with your grandmother. Right?
Thank
Which
you so
talk
much.
about social taboos. It's really, really amazing.
Thank
how
you.
you're able to use your art and put it out there and spreading the social awareness for some of the topics, which are very hard to discuss.
Yeah, I appreciate that my 93-year-old Marathi grandma is willing to talk about things like sex ed on the internet, because I think she's a doctor and if I were simply to speak about it, right, there's a lot of folks who are like, okay, she's young, Western educated, all of the above. But having that intergenerational conversation, I think the internet is a beautiful medium to help break that taboo and to, just be that window into translating that conversation from the internet to the dining table, which is where real change starts.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Ayush, of course, I got to know recently when we started this podcast.
Yes.
Actually, we're looking for somebody who can start this podcast, and we got mutual introduction to Ayush's team at Owl Media. So thank you very much, Ayush, for doing this. I thought he'll be also good on the show because his background, he started creating video at the age of 12 or 13. Then he started one failed attempt at creating an agency, then finally went and learned. Created again Owl Media, and now he's running 3 businesses. Ayush, why don't you give your introduction to the audience?
Thank you so much. By the way, another pleasure for me is just having Ankur on the show. Ankur was our first client, my first mentor at Owl, has taught me a lot about how to run a business. But thank you so much, Manav, for also giving us the opportunity to produce this. I run Owl primarily. Owl is a media and marketing company. We run a group of companies now within Owl, which helps broadly enterprise customers and larger startups with any and every media and marketing needs, right? Whether it's a podcast, an ad film, social media, influencer marketing. Now we've just started tech services in the last 1.5 years. We are building a lot in AI. We've been very aggressively doing AI services for clients, done close to 20 plus projects. Especially with larger companies. We just executed a project with Vodafone Idea. So that's my work right now. But my background actually is I started creating content when I was just 13. And that's when I realized that the world, in this world, you can actually make money online. And I come from a smaller town. You were talking about tier 2, tier 3 towns. I had no idea that you could go on the internet, make something in front of a camera, and then a check would come to you. So that was a moment of surprise for me. I say this quite often that when my first check came, my dad thought that I'd go to jail. I've done something incredibly wrong on the internet, that I'm getting money from the internet. And this is back in 2011, right? So that's what I've been doing. I also am very deep into education. In fact, we started a creator school about a year ago. That's been one of the things. So I truly believe that the creator economy is going to bring a huge change in which people consume any and every kind of information and content. And I also happen to be a creator myself. So fairly deeply involved. All my hobbies, professions, everything is in content, creator economy and media. So that's a bit about me.
Thanks, Ayush. I think creator is like a bit like a magician, right? In old days, you used to do some tricks and earn money, right? So now it's totally, you can do it in a professional way and much more skill as well.
Correct. It's a magical, I think everyone has that funny moment that, wow, ye karke bhi paisa kama sakte ho, this is, so I think that is just crazy. I think especially for all 4 of us, maybe it was magical. Maybe for the generation now it won't be, because they've grown to see
norm. It helps democratize their access to opportunity, right? You can work from whatever your circumstances are. You have families, you can work from home, you have the capacity to build your own business, just digitally enabled.
Extremely flexible. But one thing which even in Ankur's story is so incredible is that while he was making a lot of written content and video content, his breakout happened like at an age at which people don't think of creating, at least did not think of creating content, right? So that's also extremely, at 38, I think you...
40, like
38, 40, he blew out on the internet, which was extremely motivating. Like I know now my father who consumes Ankur's content, or my family who look, even you, right? Like you're now sort of creating content and all. So I think that's extremely interesting.
So it's never too late. Previous podcast which we're going to launch, we did with B.S. Nagesh, who was founder of Shopper Stop. So I think 50 plus is the category which is totally ignored in India because they have money.
Yeah.
Children have gone abroad or they're earning very well. So they don't need any money. And they have a lot of money to actually throw around in a way, right? But nobody is creating content for them, or there's not as much content. The brands are lower. So this big we're going to talk about it. So Jivraj, thank you for being on the show. I know you also flew in from Bombay along with Ayush, where you're both of you are organizing pickleball tournaments and all. But Jivraj, interesting. You're obviously an expert podcaster and also run a syndicate or angel investment along with it. So please, why don't you give introduction about yourself?
No, thank you so much for having us. I think super to be, on the same panel as Ankur, Ayush, and of course, lots of respect for what you've done, and Avanti. So thanks for having us. My story is interesting because I come from Calcutta and I studied commerce. I didn't study tech. And to be a tech investor at 25, 26 was something I didn't even imagine being. But I think what content gave me, and largely what entrepreneurship stands for, which is that, hey, you don't have to come from a certain place. You don't have to have studied something specific. As long as you're willing to create value, you can actually generate value for multiple stakeholders and stand out, which is what I find most empowering about entrepreneurship in specific and content in general, because content gives you this voice, right? You're not gate-kept by any particular platform. You don't have to go on the TV. You don't have to ask for permission. You can express freely what you want to. You can share what you feel deeply about. And if you're providing value to even one person, you can stand out. And that's what I've done. I think my most empowering moments on my podcast are when I get a comment or when a founder texts me that, hey, I watched your show and that helped me in a specific way. And that is very, very impactful in my opinion. So I run Indian Silicon Valley. I've done some 200 plus episodes now, which feels like a dream. Yet it feels like yesterday, and I could probably imagine myself doing it for the next 10, 20 years. And that is not at all shocking for me, and it feels more empowering. I also, alongside that, run an investment arm, which is by the same name. And the podcast led me to start that. People now refer to me as somewhat of a Harry Stebbings, which is a huge reference, by the way, but I didn't even know about Harry Stebbings when I started. So it's been a huge revelation to, discover myself through the journey. And it's just been personally incredibly transformational. The people that I get to spend time with, the people that I get to learn from is a huge privilege, and I wouldn't trade that for anything else in my life. So I think what I'm most grateful for is content giving me a platform that puts me in rooms that I otherwise wouldn't have access to. And that then I'm leveraging to do multiple other things, express myself. And I think that's the most empowering thing anybody can do. So at the least, if you're willing to do content, it will transform your life. And at the most, it'll make you money, they'll give you access to a great lifestyle, whatnot.
Such a noble thought, Jivraj. Really amazing to hear that. And I just want to lay the context of this, why this. So I must credit Suresh Samandam of Kissflow, who's a dear friend, also did the first episode of the podcast. So he, along with Avinash, we were having an offsite on AI. And we discussed how AI can create revenue for India, which I spoke about just now. And actually, he came with this term million by million, that can we create 1 million creators and who can all earn $1 million on an average, right? Which is about 8 crores, maybe let's give and take 9 crores today. So Ankur, I want to start with you, since you're the one who stumbled upon it in many ways and a bit early on, right? If you can just for the people who are listening to young founders or older generation like me, trying to figure out that how much money can be earned. Because if you look at if you do a Google search or ChatGPT, they will say only 3% make money, a lot of long tail, very, very hard, a lot of impact goes on you because public acceptance is sometimes hard, you get nasty comments, and you're not used to it when you're on skin. Even when you're doing a job, right? You go to a job, maybe your boss will say you something, it's all one-on-one, right? Here you are, getting backlash in public. Also, you're getting kudos in public, right? So if you can just give us some idea of your journey and how much money can really be earned. I know you did a post on Twitter or X now on how much money can be made.
Sure.
I think if you can just give us some inroads into the journey of that, what you went through and how much money can be earned.
Sure.
And how does next 5 years look like? That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So just, elaborating the opportunity for everybody else.
Great.
To understand.
I'll try and do my best. I started creating content for a very different reason. This was back in 2012, 2013 on Quora, which is now almost a defunct platform or not as much used, and LinkedIn. And the reason was I was a startup founder. We were not the best brand. We were not the most paying. We were not the coolest company to work with. And there were all of these middle agencies that used to hoard all the attention as such, and media certainly, which only Tom Storm, the most funded, the most successful ones. So what was a way to get directly to people who could potentially work with us? And that's how I started creating content on LinkedIn and Quora. And it was a incredibly fascinating journey, because I didn't even realize that there could be such goodwill that you create by simply being honest and transparent and authentic. And then that continued for 7 years. I started my YouTube channel in 2017, my Instagram channel in 2017. And the first early years were very, if I may use the word highbrow, very much like this, English content, speaking to the top 1%, mostly founders, talking about entrepreneurship, startups, much like what Jivraj has done and continues to. But that audience was by design limited. And then 2020, when COVID happened and everyone had time, and certainly I did as well, I was like, I've done so much about it. And to give you a sense and flavor of the scale, I was 40 in 2020. I had about 17,000 followers on YouTube. And almost all of them would be 90% in Bangalore and about 10% or so in Gurgaon. And that was it. There was nothing else. Startup world, I knew me, but no one beyond. And then we made two shifts. One was I started creating content in English, and I started experimenting with content a lot because I didn't know what I had to offer as a 40-year-old. The only thing I knew was my life experiences, everything that life had taught me. So I started speaking about the mistakes that I'd made with money, with relationships, with my career, of course, as a startup founder, and there's so many that I could not run out of content. And somehow during that time, people were like, we love the fact that you are breaking down money for us in a manner that we wish we had learned it from school or college, and perhaps even our parents. And March 2020 is when we kind of focused, and I built a team. By October, November 2020, we knew that we would do personal finance and in English mostly. And by November 2021, I had 1 million followers. And it just went like I had not expected. Today, we are on 5.8 million or something like that. Wow. And it's just incredible, the scale. And that's when I started to understand what the creator economy is, because I'm a founder, right? So I don't even think of that. And I remember Avanti mentioning this before we started, that if you start thinking of this not as content creation, not as, oh, I'm putting a reel out or a shorts out or a pod out and I'm doing it for likes or engagement and so on, but I actually have a business mindset behind that. And I remember endless conversations with Ayush around this. Like, think of it like a business. Think of it like economics. You give some, you take some. It has to mean monetary value at some point. I began to just uncover that. And I think what really helped me was the 14 years of entrepreneurial experience that got there. And one thing that I wanted to always do is just break down that myth of how easy or hard it is. So what you encountered yesterday is what I've been doing for the last 4 years. 2020 was the first year that we released our financials, and we've released our financials in all transparency all the last 4 years. We are a total of about 14.8 million followers. Of course, these are overlapped, not unique, across all platforms. So give or take what you could do from that. And then there are brand collaborations, which is the largest pot that there is. Yeah. You would have sponsors coming in, you would have people who would want to do integrations with you, whether direct, indirect, so on. That was a huge pie early on, and I didn't even know how to wrap my head around it, because like, how would somebody pay 10 lakhs for a 30-second reel, which takes me zero effort to make? Because all that I'm doing is just recording it, and that's all that they care about. And then I realized that essentially it's not paying for time. It's paying for all the years that you've made this distribution, which is the same thing as a TV channel getting money for doing that, and not so much for the property that they're being advertised on. So it's wonderful, and I'm sure all of you have incredible examples on that. The fascinating thing about brand collaborations is that the more specific you are with the kind of audience you have, the likelier is it that you will find the right brands to work with. Because if you are creating content around parenting, you will have the right brands. And if you're creating it around children's books, you will have the right one. You're creating it around music or art, you'll have the right ones. You're creating around personal finance, you'll have the right one. So it's almost like there is a niche or a specific around it. And then there are, of course, extensions around it. You could write books, you could release your merchandise, you could sell your own courses, you could do all of this. And it's just endless and scalable, because it's...
So how does the revenue scale? At what point in time you start making revenue? So if you start in 21, for example. And just for audience, I just want to make sure we go micro on the revenue scale.
Yeah.
So let's say it's easier to start, right? You put some content.
It's
out
very
there.
easy to start. It's hard to make money. It's really, really hard to make money.
So what is that? Where does the table turn on that, right?
I have a personal take on that, and I'd love to hear.
I would love to hear everybody's view on that.
Because, don't sell yourself too early. Don't sell yourself too early.
So what does it mean when you say?
So what it means in numbers, I often say this is until you don't hit 100,000 followers on any platform that you are, don't ever make money from it. Now that of course comes from a point of privilege because you may have to make money.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, okay. But if you have a choice of not making money, then don't sell yourself before 100,000 followers, whether on Insta or on YouTube or any place else. Because then when you command a certain price, you'll get a certain minimum bar which you ought to have deserved for all these years. And you will never be anchored to a really low amount for the next foreseeable future. I know of so many creators who had 10,000 and not a niche audience, but a broad audience, they'll maybe do a collab for 3,000, 5,000 rupees. Now what happens is, unfortunately, till the time they hit 100,000, they're still languishing in the 3,000 to 5,000 range when they've actually grown so much. But if you did your first deal at 100,000, it's quite possible that you'll get 25, 30, 40, 50,000. And that becomes your anchor till you hit a 500,000.
So let's say once somebody reaches 100,000 followers, how much money can they make on an average? Or to think about it, like if somebody does hard work to get to 100,000.
No, I think reasonably you could make between 50,000 to a lakh a month.
A month, wow,
a month.
That's very nice.
If you are at 100,000 and you have an audience which is engaged.
I understand.
An engaged audience, not like bot and stuff like that. But I would say, will that be a good call?
Actually, you can make even more. Depends upon platform to platform. So let's say LinkedIn right now has very few 100,000 creators. I know people who are doing 4 to 5 collaborations, charging 40 to 50,000 per collaboration. They can make 2 to 2.5 lakhs a month. Whereas on Instagram, the demand supply is now equalizing. So Instagram then, it is much more about the category. So finance and a tech creator with 100,000 followers can earn similar amounts, which is around 2 lakhs. But if you're a lifestyle and a fashion creator, there are too many of them. And the differentiation between them is less. So they might be making closer to a lakh a month because the per reel charge for them is slightly lower because brands don't want to pay that much. It's also about what the brand gets after, a fintech, highly funded fintech company paying money versus a fashion company paying money. There's a certain amount of difference. Same with YouTube and other platforms. So it really depends platform-wise, then what type of creator you are, so on and so forth. But if you want to start today and if earning money is immediate money is the goal, then LinkedIn is an extremely underrated platform and will continue to stay so because it's also relatively easier to start making content on LinkedIn because you can start with text. Hardest to make money on YouTube, but it's the most amount of depth that you create with the audience. So that's the money scale. It only sort of exponentially increases with your follower increase. The only caveat that Ankur mentioned, which stays true, is you need to have an engaged following. 5-6% is a very good engagement rate. So 100,000 followers, if you're getting 3,000-4,000 likes, that's incredible. So that's the broader range.
I understand. What's your experience, Jivraj and Avanti?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, I've only been able to broadly scale on YouTube, which is about I reached 100K about a quarter back. And I agree with those numbers. I think anywhere, if you have a deeper audience, that leads to more monetization. In my experience, I've also been able to monetize the audience or what I do in terms of content in another measure, which is investing.
Yeah.
And that's been a revelation. So I truly also believe that if you're doing great work in a certain aspect, the network effects of what you do, if you have a highly credible audience, can be massive because my podcast gets watched by investors, which builds credibility on the investor side for me.
Right.
And that in turn leads me to a lot of capital on the capital pool that I have. So I've deployed about $6 million now. And that as a first-time investor would have been considerably difficult had I not had something to show for, which is proof of work on the podcast side. And it also gives me enough differentiation to stand out in terms of other investors. So I think that's the other piece that often gets missed, which is, hey, there's one way to look at direct monetization from the distribution that you attribute. And the other is, if you are doing great work in whatever aspect, it could be, let's say you're an artist and you're doing really high quality work, you may not have extremely high distribution, yet if it's very concentrated distribution, you could sell pieces of art in credible places, and that could lead to large amounts of revenue. In my case, it was on the investing side. In somebody else's case, it could be something else. So that's another viewpoint to look at, because if you're not, then you don't have to dilute your level of content. You don't have to chase dopamine. You don't have to chase likes. What you have to chase then is extremely good quality work, value generation for the kind of audience that you have identified. So I think that's a good viewpoint to take as well.
Got it. Avanti?
Yeah, I think the content is a funnel, right? And so I think if you're starting as a content creator today, thinking about what is the value you could add if this platform didn't exist, because then you are not relying on the platform and again, chasing the dopamine hit and everything else, and figuring out how to create value in multiple capacities. I think in our case, right, we've not stuck to a niche. We've had this multi-variety formats of content. Obviously, some of it's in the music and art space, but a lot of it is touching upon education, health, all of these things. And because our audience is very young, we typically end up getting partnerships with, say, a personal finance company looking to target younger folks and getting them into that, right? Or a health tech brand looking to spread awareness about certain services, or a lot of ed tech brands. And we're incredibly intentional. Also, me being a woman, and I guess I take care of my body, health, skin, a lot of products as well, right? Reach out. We're incredibly intentional about the people we partner with, because there is a danger as a creator of becoming a walking, talking advertisement board. And the only thing you have going for you as a creator versus, say, a traditional celebrity who might have gained that kind of public visibility is your trust and your credibility. Right? You see actors selling all sorts of products that you know they for sure do not use, but it's because you're doing this association-based marketing that people will be like, okay, I'll remember it by recall value. Whereas for a creator, you suddenly see that you are endorsing something that does not fit in with your lifestyle, right? For example, I don't drink, and in the performance spaces, a lot of sponsors are alcohol brands, but we're very intentional about not partnering with them because that's just not something that I endorse personally, lifestyle-wise. And obviously you lose out on a lot of potential money there, but I think the ethics, for lack of a better word, or really the trust and credibility that you believe in is what's going to hold you in good stead. And I do also think that, you know, when I'm talking about this online versus offline piece, there is that value creation you can have beyond. So you can, you know, consult on different projects. You can, in my case, I perform and speak as another primary source of income. And I know several of us do that as well. And I think it's about the primary thing that I've noticed is, yes, value creation is important. Niche-based distribution is important. Understanding your audience and being able to talk about that in terms of partnerships. But most importantly, a sense of community. Right? And do people feel like they're receiving value beyond just information, but do they feel like they're connected to a larger sense of themselves? One platform that we used to use a lot during COVID was Discord. And I don't know if you're familiar with Discord, but we had a Discord server of about 40,000 people. And for Discord, that's actually quite high. And I think a lot of people found value in the fact that they could connect with each other. And it was a community of like-minded young people from, it was a lot of parts of South Asia and, you know, developing parts of the world broadly, who cared about certain topics and could connect with each other, right? And I think it's about, if everything were to shut down today, right? We are all grateful and privileged to have all of these platforms, but if everything were to shut down today, do you have the confidence in yourself that you provide and hold enough credibility and value and have built enough of a community that can outlast you? Right? Which is why I think the move for a lot of people to building newsletters, WhatsApp communities, ways in which they can directly access their audience beyond, because TikTok shut down in India, it might shut down in the US right now, right? And what happens? You can't rely on that. Think of it more as a tool to build community or lead gen for that, but then what is that real core? And I think from the artistic world, right, as an artist, we think of it as, who are your super fans, right? Your most engaged consumers, customers, audience, and who is your discoverable audience? Everybody else is just concentric circles in between, and you should not cater to either. So if you're getting feedback from people who you know have been following your journey for years, you should take that seriously as you would from a friend, right? And you should think actively about, okay, what does discoverability look like for things that I'm trying to attract, and truly only cater to those two, because everybody else is, you know, a fair weather person.
It's a great point. That's why you have now platforms like Patreon and all, who's helping you build your fan base and subscription-based services, or Substack for that matter, right?
Exactly.
So a lot of platforms are coming into play. See, what I want to bring in, so before November 22, there was no ChatGPT, no AI, right? So how has your word changed, Ankur, from when you started in 2017 and then ChatGPT came to now? So how is AI or tools like that is impacting your world?
On three dimensions. One, at the lowest common denominator is the ability to create content in multiple languages with almost same persona and replicate that ad infinitum. Incidentally, while on my way to the WeWork here, we just closed a dubbing agency, which will now start dubbing our English content in 10 other languages. And it happens at a pace of 1 hour of content done within 1 day. So in 1 day, we're able to transliterate and, of course, dub completely automated with, of course, a human intervention. And it's ridiculously cheap in comparison.
I know you also started using rephrase.ai very early on in your life cycle.
I was fascinated by what they were doing. And I remember being early adopters of it and just trying them out because they were just such unique use cases around advertising, around how we had done that. The simple example that we used was the second book that I released, Get Epic Shit Done in 2021 and 2022 end, sorry. Everyone who bought a book, they got a personalized WhatsApp video, which had their name in it and just me thanking them. And that was it. And they'd pulled this off, of course, with the likes of Shah Rukh Khan and everyone for Asian Paints and blah, blah, blah. So incredible one. So that's low and common denominator. At the highest end is using AI to do nearly all of our content generation because there's already so much of resident content that has been created over years. So for me, and we have...
Can you give an example on that?
Yeah, so right now, through a combination of Claude, well, right now O1 is just absolutely ridiculous when it comes to ChatGPT, far better than what we thought Claude would be. So between Claude and GPT and 2 or 3 other platforms, we have this engine of 17 prompts that we have created and mastered over time. And we have resident content of nearly 1,400 hours of video content that we have uploaded in there, transcribed, and they have learned through it. We have, of course, nearly 12 plus years of Twitter content, of LinkedIn content, of Quora content, which is all text. And then we have our documents and PDFs and so on. So I can right now go and say, write the script for a 17-minute YouTube video around what should be your mutual fund strategy for 2025 for this channel. I don't have to give any other specification. And I can show you examples of that script that will come out, and you will never believe it is generated by a machine. It is ridiculous.
It's Ankur personified in ChatGPT.
It just knows me. It knows me through everything that we have done all of these years. And that's why I say that the future of entertainment is just so personalized, where when we're sitting and maybe there will be a Netflix 10 years down, maybe not, but let's say there is, we will not be browsing the same titles.
Yeah.
He will actually say, build a movie with Shah Rukh Khan and with Keanu Reeves, with the music from Arijit Singh or whosoever he cares about, and make it into a thriller. Tuck, 15-minute processing, and he'll get the 3-hour movie that he wants to watch. And it'll be only for him. And it will not make sense for Jivraj and for Avanti and for me and for Manav.
Unless you become an influencer there as well.
And what it will do, which I think is the fascinating thing in the future, is it will suddenly make everyone not a creator but a production house.
You don't think so? Yeah.
And he could then technically run his studio because his prompts are so on point with the sentiment of the world, maybe for a specific generation, maybe for the 13 to 25-year-old, maybe for the SaaS guy, maybe for the investing guy, that it's just on point for them. And they're like, I want to subscribe to the Ayush feed of AI or content. Just as we subscribe to investors who are like, "Arey, jo bhi wo khareed raha hai, wahi khareed lo because we'll get the same IRR."
Yeah, that's true. No, my word has changed from SaaS to AI. So how about you, Ayush? So you run a media agency, right?
Yeah.
So of course you've seen the massive shift as well.
No,
so
I
do
think
you
my
resonate with the
business is
Ankur?
just out for disruption the next 2-3 years. So I am flapping my wings very hard to figure out. But no, the last 1.5 years, we have done a bunch of changes in the way we approach work. I think 2-3 things that are very, very critical to us which will change. Number one, the generation process will be really, really fast. So what we're trying to understand, I cater to a client, right? So what I have gone back to first principles thinking is that if I have to still extract money from an enterprise or a startup, what will not change in the ecosystem? What will not change fundamentally is the CMO will still pick up the phone and get work done from somebody else. So that's not changing. They will still reach out to somebody to get the work done, right? Because not every piece of operation can be in-house. So if that is not changing, then I need to optimize my processes in such a way that I compete on prices, speed, efficiency, and all these metrics. So as a production house, as a media company, what are we doing is we are first redefining all our processes and also redefining where will human intervention be needed the most. And what we have identified is two things actually. First is empathy. Second is storytelling. Empathy is, at the end of the day, everybody is extremely personal. We look at advertising, we're like, Fevicol jaisa ad chahiye, Cred jaisa ad chahiye, right? But people still don't end up creating the same ads, right? Like every company creates a different ad. Every person creates a different type of content piece, which may be really bad for Jivraj, but might be amazing for Avanti, right? Which is how personal things are. So if you're able to develop empathy in the team, they will understand the client better, because that's not something which the machine can do, because that communication layer still needs human in it, and that's what I believe, and I may be completely wrong 10 years down the line. Second is storytelling and curation. At the end of the day, because the speed of creating content is increasing at such a fast pace, there will be a plethora of content. By the way, today I feel I have a course, but there is no unique value in the course. The unique value in my course is, I think it's the best curated material out there. If you were to go out there, learn freelancing on your own, and that's the course that I run, you will have to spend 100 hours just figuring out what should I watch, because number of content pieces have increased, and they're only going to exponentially increase. Curation is going to become so much more important. So what can I curate for my client which is great for them, and then distribute it for them? So curating, storytelling for them, which only comes from understanding them deeply, which is empathy. So these are some emotions which we are trying to evolve within our teams. So now a designer is no longer a designer in Owl, right? I'm telling them, can all of you think like a creative director? Can all of you think like storytellers? Can all of you think like people who have great taste? Taste is not something which AI can do. AI will give you everything. AI will give you a really bad looking creative and the best creative as well. But what do you select, right? Canva has existed for so long. People still make terrible presentations. In the same amount of time, I might make a great presentation. Jivraj might make an even better one, because we have taste. So these are skills. So that's what I've done, right? Which is identified what are some skills which I think will not change. So that's the one thing which we're doing in the company. Second is, in the future, a lot of things will also change in the way content is created, right? For example, what Ankur is saying, a lot of my creator friends are extremely scared that they will. So one thing which is happening in the creator economy is that democratization is happening, and this happened in the US, where each creator now is getting paid lesser, by the way. So because now the supply demand is evening out. Back in 2021, if I had to go to a fintech creator, Ankur and maybe five more names, and I'm done. So Ankur and other creators could command a rate which was extremely high, very premium, but 5 years down the line, that will not be the case. But what will be still an opportunity is vernacular. Ankur does not exist in Telugu. A person like Ankur does not exist in a Telugu market. Can we do that? And AI allows you to do that at a staggering speed. So I feel a lot of opportunities and monetization are also there in just vernacular, not just within India, but also internationally. Mr. Beast has been doing this extremely successfully across regions, across countries, and for the lack of a better word, minting money from just the same piece of content, but just adjusted in different languages and everything. So I think a lot of changes. As creators, we can't be scared when it comes to
So does mean for an enterprise, the cost of production will come down?
Cost of production will come down. But I feel what people don't understand is, and you actually established this in the very beginning of the podcast, which is internet consumption is, it's going to go higher. The overall cost will come down. Number of people on the platforms will increase. What we're also not realizing is my 60-year-old father also now scrolls reels for 2 hours.
Yeah.
This behavior is going to now only increase, which means the overall content consumption is going up. So while, of course, number of creators are going up, content created is going up, but consumption is also going exponentially higher. So while an enterprise is creating more pieces of content, they will still need a lot more in the future.
That I understand, but what is the impact? Can you break down the impact on the cost of production? So the two things are changing, cost and the speed.
Yeah.
Right? So both are, because previously you will go shoot an ad,
Correct.
it will take time, then you adjust it, then you launch, then you test it, right? So if you also bring in the personalization to it, right?
Yeah.
While we're talking about increased consumption, reduced cost, demographic effect, right? But also personalization is coming to play, to Ankur's point, right?
Correct.
So how is it impacting the cost? What was the cost before the
So
AI
I'll tell you
came in?
how we
What is
define
the cost now? Yeah.
more than the cost. There are 3 C's. First, I think 10 years down the line, media will look at consent, creativity, and curation. So we will not need to sit here in a podcast. Production will not exist at all. There will be AI avatars of me, Ankur, Avanti, Jivraj. So first you need is consent. So you will just send them an email. Can I use this part? I've written this for you. Does this work for you? So that's consent. Second is creativity. Where you want this podcast to happen, AI can make it happen for you. But the taste, where to happen, the curation, like that creative taste will come from you. So that will be still of value, and that's something which will never be disrupted. And third is curation. What to say? AI can say anything. Man, abundance is not good. Abundance is great to just start something, but then you realize that it's not great, right? Because you have to cut things down. So I think 10 years down the line, production will look like this. And this actually disrupts the cost in a big way, because now you don't need 3 divisions, right? Production used to have 3 divisions. You used to have pre-production, which is writing, creative direction, storyboarding, all of these things. Then you have production, which is what we are doing right now. There are big lights, big cameras. It's an expensive production. I'll be sending you an invoice after this. And so production, and then there's post-production, right? In the future, production will completely go away. It will only be 1 person in pre-production, 1 person in post-production. That's it. Only 2 people, and only machines, code, softwares, that's it. So we're going from a 35, 40 people being employed to do this to just 2 people being employed. And that's going to be a significant shift. So that's how I look at it. So if you master these 3 C's, and if you understand that this is where, like if I were a DOP, my 5 years, I would be like, I need to shift to post-production because that will still exist.
See, I think also all these waves, at least in my experience, it also does a lot of room for new people to come in. So if you see, right, so when we all talk about content comes down, see, all of you are example of people who came in new. There were people who, that's what I asked you before this chat, that how it used to happen before that, right? So in every wave that when I started, I was an enterprise software, then cloud has become AI now. So the biggest pattern that I can see from this is that actually it gives the new things to come in a bigger way than the previous one did.
The biggest thing, Manav, that I've observed is, if I may to equate it to the showbiz business, there are the film stars or the TV stars and whatnot, and it's a highly unpredictable success rate.
Yeah.
And it's also very short-lived. But the ones that have predictability and consistency, and also thus disproportionate value accruing to them, nearly not to the same extent, are the ones who are building the spades. So which are the spade industries? Like the iPhone launched and suddenly there was this ancillary industry of chargers and phone covers and whatnot that came in. So did video editors exist in the shape and form that they exist right now? No. Forget video editors. Short form video editors, people who specialize in hooking the attention of people in 40 seconds. Long form video editors, which are more about the true blue editors that we have seen maybe in feature films and so on. Graphic designers, prompt engineers, people who are content writers, but also curators, ghost writers, people who are art specialists, which are not physical art, but actually digital art specialists who would set the entire stage for what could be an experience. And these are occupations / professions that have emerged in the last 5 years and gone to a scale where it is insane. Simple example, just in my team, I'm sure you have several examples, is that my team is a fully freelance team where we have very few full-timers, but there are people who are just captive for me. And I can't even begin to tell you the ridiculous amounts that they earn. Forget creators, like where you're talking about, 50,000 and 1 lakh and you're shocked. These people are in solo businesses earning 3 to 5 lakhs a month. They're 22 years of age. They're video editors sitting in Kanpur and in Nagpur and in Agra. And it is insane how this industry has blown up over the last 5 years. And so you're right. The next 10 years, we'll see a whole new wave of skill sets coming in. And the DOP better be smart to say, that's where the wave is, that's where the puck is going, and I need to move in that direction. Else, they'll be doomed, but there'll always be space for people who will thrive with a new sense. Just the same way that, when in engineering, AutoCAD came in, like you come from that era, like mechanical drawing, wo tube leke ja rahe hain, we're making it, all of that. And then
that's
AutoCAD comes in.
I hated that all those years.
And, people were like, AutoCAD has come in, it will just take away. Or when 3D came in for architects, you're like, our job is done. No. In fact, my prediction, slightly different from what Ayush is saying, or perhaps what you're predicting, the cost of production on a per production basis will go dramatically low, but the cost of quality production will go exponentially high.
I agree.
Because now you're trying to find the needle in the haystack. So in our media, if it charges X, be prepared for 10X the invoice amount coming your way, because it will know how to get that done.
Yeah.
While everyone else will be like, ChatGPT पे prompt डाल दो तो आ जाएगा, but everyone will be then sounding the same.
I'm okay to pay any time as long as I get value, right? It's all about
Exactly. That's what
So I think it's not about the absolute amount, it's about the return that you
Totally.
get on the investment. So
Yeah.
Avanti, I want to come to you. I know we were chatting a little bit about a startup that you did on the similar lines, right? So can you explain a little bit more in the same context of the thread we're talking about? That how is the creation or creator economy is changing and what are you doing for it?
So I have 3 points on the AI and creativity front. One, let's talk about the vernacular opportunity, right, and the regionalization opportunity. So over the last year, we've been doing this project where we've done 50 songs in 50 different languages with artists from across the world. We've done all 22 Indian languages and a bunch of other unknown ones as well. And I think the reason that it gained, some sort of visibility and people appreciated it is because they felt like it was a genuine effort to understand culture represented through music, fashion, language. And it was authentic, if that makes sense, right? All of the artists had those roots in those regions. The issue with the AI dubbing right now, and we've tried, I've wanted to regionalize my content since 2021. And at the time, it was too expensive. And over the last 6 months, we tried to experiment with a lot of AI. The issue is they haven't developed well enough to cater to the Indian languages, where the transliteration and the lip dubbing
is in sync.
It's in sync. It's incredibly wonky. And as an Indian creator, you are not going to receive the same kind of, okay, theek hai, attitude that say a Mr. Beast does. A Mr. Beast you're watching in Hindi and it sounds like it's some Shinchan dub and it's fine, right? Whereas if you are an Indian creator, you are expected that you have some sort of cultural nuance and relevance. And so I think, the vernacular opportunity in India is not just about the language, because that's one thing, right? But it's also about, what does language mean to people? It means identity. It means culture. Are you catering to those nuances? And so that will be a huge opportunity. And I think, one, AI will disrupt it, hopefully, with more information. But that will also create a lot of jobs because we don't have enough data, right, in a lot of these vernacular languages. And so hopefully that'll create a lot of opportunity for people in different regions of India. Number 2, I think what it is going to replace, say from a production capacity or other capacities, is anything generative. So I can take a picture of you, Manav, and make it look like you're in Greece right now, right? I can increase my video editing speed, make clips, make cuts, do all of that. And that aspect of generative AI, design, we are seeing that already with Canva and many other tools, is going to have an issue. But like you were saying, if you're able to think like a creative director to direct that AI, you are always going to be in business.
Yes.
That's number 1. But number 2, I don't think it's going to replace the on-ground space of the creative services. What I mean by that is it's going to take a long time for people to trust AI to capture their weddings, right? Or to capture these big events in their lives where that is so important. Like you can program right now, you can program a camera or you can program AI to capture motion, but not emotion. And also the correct emotion, right? And so I think those types of things, if anything, is going to increase opportunity for people who are smart and are thinking from a intersectional lens. Because I would say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, one of the biggest jobs was coding, for example, right? If you're a coder, you'd always be in, you'd always have money or design for that matter. And now the issue is Devin can code faster and better than you, right? Sora is going to be introduced. We'll see what that does to video generation and creation. And I think the issue is if you focus on just specializing in one space that is a broad niche, you're going to be replaced very fast. But if you happen to have some sort of intersectional idea, right? You know a lot about business and this space. You know a lot about how different markets in the world work. You are both a creative and a techie. Whatever it is, if you're able to bring both of those lenses together, you are going to always be in business, is my personal opinion.
I cannot agree more than you on that point of time, right? So therefore, there's a new field called creative technologies emerging, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because what we're also going to see going forward is the emergence of physical and the digital world, right? Previously, internet remained a digital and physical world separate. Now, as AI becomes more intelligent, it will start getting into a physical world, right? More and more. Like robots are going to come, humanoids are going to come. Each surface can become more intelligent. So as we are going towards that, you'll have to understand at least two fields. So, for example, creative technology is the one who not only understand how OpenAI is developing its interface, but also which goes behind the scene, which algorithms work or not, right? So you understand both sides. Similarly, example of a business and a creator is a great example, like Ankur, who you are, right? You were an entrepreneur before, so you understand the dynamics and the nuts and bolts of how to make money, if lack of a better word, right? And then you layered creativity on top of it. Suddenly, therefore, you're also able to make a great bootstrap living from that, right? So I think the amalgamation of two or more fields is going to be really, really important. And that is a big opportunity, I think, which people are going to
completely. And it's also our physical worlds will change and be more intelligent, but we will, like you were saying offline, we will also be living more in the virtual world, right? You'll be living in the metaverse quite literally. If you see what's happening with all of the versions of VR glasses, right, and AR glasses, and what that's transporting people into, it's crazy, and it's also scary for me personally as a older sister, right, and just somebody who interacts with a lot of young people on a daily basis, because that's their norm, right, and not just from a safety perspective, that's super important. Safety, deepfakes, your understanding of yourself and the world. What is the world? I mean, we're going to get existential and be like, what is Maya? What is the world? You know, in a way that we have for generations, but now it's just this.
Even more.
And I think what's going to happen as a result is, we were also discussing this, people are going to seek out these real world physical experiences more and more, and that tangible experience, right? You already see a loneliness epidemic in our generation. I don't know if you feel the same. Why are people coming to pickleball events? Why are people joining run clubs? Why are they joining book clubs? You talk to somebody in their 50s, they're like, "Arey bhai, hum sab padhte the." You know, now everybody's sitting in a park and reading. Wow, what a brilliant idea. But the reason that's happening because we're seeking that out.
So there'll always be balance, right? Yin and yang. So when you go towards too much digital, you always want to seek some physical. We were all very physical, then we went into digital. I think that'll continue to happen. But before we move on to this topic, Ankur, I know you have to roll off. So I would love to know a little bit more before you go on deepfakes, right? It's a massive issue for celebrities, and for also a lot of scam happens because of deepfake, right? So
we're grappling with that right now as we speak.
So how do you handle as a creator, right? How do you handle deepfake? Tomorrow I can have deepfake your voice and start giving wrong lessons on mutual funds or something.
Absolutely. Right? What you're saying is exactly what's happening right now. So there will be deep fakes, and you most likely haven't encountered them because they know that you won't fall for it. But there are ads that are running. These are Facebook profiles that have been created. They will be named random, DDCCPP, whatever it is. And they have cloned my voice, my face. So the exact same rephrase.ai that I would have used for good is being now used there. And it's speaking about a stock, and it's essentially saying, I told you 6 months back that this stock would go up, and look at the price, it is actually going up. And if you want to know more of these stocks, just join this WhatsApp or this Telegram group. And these are ads which have proliferated the entire Instagram universe, at least in my following. So
how do
funny
you
enough,
how do you handle that?
Well, there are only 3 ways. Number one is you always alert your audiences, but unfortunately, the biggest realization that you ought to have as a creator is that you don't own your audience. The platform owns your audience. You wish you did, but you never do. So even if I have X million people, if I were to put out anything, less than 20% will ever consume that. But it's your responsibility to put that out. So you will time and again frequently put that out. You have tools and agencies. So again, ancillary industry that has emerged. So we have an agency that's engaged to identify these fakes, report them to these platforms. The platforms, to their credit, do a fairly good job when they're sensitized about it, but they just don't have a mechanism of doing it. If we have to raise it to the agencies out there, we have even written to SEBI and the likes, because these are money-involved scams and they impact people and so on, and their money. And then the third is you actually work on the policy itself. So funny enough, I can't name, but I was on a long conversation on Thursday with one of the large tech companies trying to just work through what they need to do with AI to identify these deep fakes and cut them from the bud itself. Just nip them, because this is only the start. But it's a huge problem, and it will always be, as Avanti mentioned, no consent as you would wish. It's not a come.
See, consent is a larger context on data as well. So because wherever it's free, we are products, right? Starting with Google to everywhere else. That's how it is, right?
We're cookified wherever we are.
Yeah.
But I do think what
So-
Ankur mentions, like building a security and a safety layer, both from a services and a product lens,
Yeah.
is going to be a huge opportunity.
Massive.
I have a lot of friends in the US in the
Trying to
Valley and
build.
who are already building in this
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To basically
That's how
identify
startups
these.
will emerge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and just-
absolutely.
No, so in our portfolio there are multiple privacy and security companies as well. But I was trying to get a view on, as a creator, what one has to be careful about when you think about it. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's just as a creator. My concern is young people, anybody who has their face they've posted one thing, their face is publicly out there, right?
Like revenge porn.
yeah, revenge porn is huge.
It's huge, right? You're like you're a school kid and you just broke up and it went ugly, and all you need to do is just dally and you would have an image that you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to.
I think it's actually, in my opinion, scarier for the consumer. Like just before the podcast, I was telling Manav about the AI TikTok filter.
Yeah.
People are already insecure, right? Like creators are still a small fraction. Actual large
Consumers,
audience
yeah.
are the consumers.
Yeah.
I talked to my younger cousin. They're extremely insecure, more anxious than I've ever seen any 13, 14-year-old being. They look at this person who's using a filter on the internet, and this AI TikTok filter has gotten so good that even while you speak, they can figure out giving you a better jawline, making you look like this Korean beauty person or whatever the latest beauty standards in the market are, with like glass skin and whatnot. And you will not even understand whether this is AI or not. And this sets a very wrong precedence for the person who is just 14 years old. They think that this is how I'm supposed to look like. I don't look like this. So how will they understand that this is fake? And this is developing at such a fast pace that earlier people would think photo is edited, so they trusted video. Now video is edited, so they're like, let me trust live video. But now AI is so good at doing this live that even a live video can't be trusted.
Yeah.
So how do you, even like, by the way, content also percolates to dating profiles. There are so many scams going on, Tinder, Bumble. You can never tell who is real, who is not.
Yeah.
Gayatri, who runs Altered, my fiance, she has been making these such real looking people with proper freckles and then, smaller things that you would like to gauge whether the person is real or not. She's been able to get to that level. My profile picture, by the way, on all platforms is AI, by the way. Nobody has pointed that out yet. I'm happy. I mean, also
let the
sad
secret
at the
out
same
now.
time, So the fact that you can now, so I'm actually more concerned about the consumers. They will not be able to understand, and insecurity will go up, anxiety will go up, and just it's a very bad space to
So
be.
it is hard to, from a tech side, and what we see is hard to predict right now because it's really changing extremely fast.
Yes.
So unless it stabilizes a bit, then only tools can stabilize, right? So because the security is a catch up, right? Because new technology comes, and there's always some amount of risk in innovation, right? The users adopt it. And then the deepfakes also, or the people who are trying to break that security cover also moves at a very fast pace, right? So I think it's going to be right now this chicken and egg problem as to what comes first and where.
But it's like, if I were to go back to the 1990s, 2000s, what were the virus companies at that time essentially doing is what will be needed again. Because you can never be ahead of the curve of what gets built. But you ought to have the capacity and capability in-house to always be working and come up with a quote-unquote solution or a drug that solves that problem.
And that's where, to Ayush's point, a lot of consumer awareness is also required. Like we all of us got to know about a virus.
Yeah.
We always look for Norton virus or semantic virus coming up, window coming in, right?
Exactly.
So something has to come up whereby, just by awareness,
Even general education in these spaces
general
is
education is
really
missing.
important.
I was discussing with Jivraj that what will the next Truecaller look like? Like I would pay for a Truecaller because it identifies spam. It tells me that this is spam and this is not. With so much clutter on the internet, I'm sure there is the next big opportunity to build in the space that what is the Truecaller equivalent of identifying
AI
content which I just shouldn't be consuming for XYZ reasons, and I can set my own markers, right? By the way, one of our close friends, Apurva, she was telling us she gets so much random hate on the internet because she's at a really large scale. She has marked some words so she never gets to see those comments.
Yeah.
So she has protected herself in a certain way. I think this needs to evolve even further.
Yeah.
But you were saying something.
Yeah, I think platforms in fact have a larger responsibility on this basis, right? I think instead of the mass consumer being educated, I think if posts on Instagram, LinkedIn show up saying that this is generated by AI, and they're regulating this all the time, right? I think in the US elections, there was a massive debate around this, not just this year, but last time around in 2020 as well. So I think some of these opportunities are open to startups to actually capture the horizontal layer of platforms, right? Like sell a software to Instagram to make them more aware of what's getting uploaded, maybe break that down and maybe have markers for what is AI generated versus what is not. Because, I mean, doing that on a personal level, scams always happen. They've happened since, like, on calls as well, right? People still get scammed on calls. So it's not an AI phenomena, it's a consumer phenomena. How can platforms do it better could be a good question to ask. And if somebody can solve for that, that's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. I think also what happens is, so platform and policy go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
So government also has to look at it, right? And the challenge which, we've been talking with various policy makers on that, the challenge is that, for example, if you look at UK, has adopted the policy first and innovation later. Because if you bring the policy, innovation slows down. And right now there's also a geopolitical race to who's going to win the AI, right? So therefore this issue is a bit complex to handle. But I know deepfakes...
but I would love to understand, do you think policy should come first or innovation should come first?
Almost always the choke point for innovation. Not
I think
the
policies
enabler of
always
it.
come later.
Absolutely.
So I think the best way to think about, at least the way I think about it is, if I'm in November 22, could I make policy for AI? No.
Yeah.
Because there was no ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the internet or AI movement for the world, right? Where mass adoption started. Now, for me to make a policy or even to suggest a policy to the government, I have to first understand what AI is going to do, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll make a policy which A, will not be effective.
Very restrictive.
It will not be effective at all, right? Because things are changing. What I think today may not be relevant tomorrow. So therefore, a larger framework of AI has to emerge in which the policy, that's number one. Number two, these are also now geopolitical wars.
Yeah.
Today, if you look at it, especially in India, we are consuming internet by all the companies in the US.
Yeah.
You can think good or bad, but the reality is that most of the revenue goes to Google, Facebook or Meta, Apple, right? So there's no Indian company who's taking our revenue away, right? And therefore the data law is coming now. The entire which Prime Minister Modi launched over longer, DigiLocker and the data privacy law is coming now after almost 20 years of internet, right?
Yeah.
So similarly now a lot of countries want to unleash AI with their companies so that they can get larger market share.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very difficult piece to handle right now. I think India is far ahead. Government is doing a very good job, by the way. They have made a advisory council. They're trying to figure it out, what will work or not.
Interesting.
So I think it has to go hand in hand. If I were in my hand, I will actually create a policy team which is in tune with the innovation team and try to start interacting first and understand how policy should be shaped up.
I think a fundamental thing that we sort of miss to set context, right, is why building content in 2025 is really important, right? While of course AI is coming, but actually the next big opportunity is something which is very obvious, which is everybody will need to build their own distribution.
Yeah.
Like, because AI is also disrupting, you said coding, right? Like building products is going to be much more easier. I go to a product hunt and the speed at which new products are coming in, that's a very small marker of like identifying this is insane. And I was telling Manav that Jan was that 1 month where I'm flooded with briefs from every single company that build our organic distribution. We are done paying to a Facebook. We're done paying to a Google. Everybody wants to build their organic distribution. So the very obvious next big opportunity is also just to realize that whichever business you're in, you need to become a content company and build your own distribution, because building the product and building something is going to get much more easier in every capacity. And the reason I say Ankur is super relevant here is because that's what you've done. You've built an edtech company with a layer of content and distribution.
My prediction is the biggest shift in AI from a world impact perspective will be when the phone OS becomes AI. Like today, it's very intuitive and perhaps even fundamental for us to think that I will download a Blinkit and I will download a thing. But we don't download websites. We access websites through the internet. Your phone will become your AI device through which you will not have any app, nothing whatsoever. And that means I can access Ayush and Avanti and Jivraj and Manav and Ankur without ever having an app of theirs. And what you will build then is, as you pointed out, a repository of that content, which whichever mechanism, whether lower cost of production and so on. And this is my fundamental belief that AI is not a product. It's a service layer. And the more and more you think of a product, you are ripe for disruption, because when it becomes service like the internet did 20 years back, you will no longer exist. So, like, I was telling this to the Google team, and you could take this out of the podcast. Like, you stupid calling this Gemini. Like, are you dumb? You don't call AI anything. Like, you're not a ChatGPT. You don't have to build that. You build Gemini in your products. It has to be seamless. So Gmail will have Gemini. You call it whatever you want to call it internally. But I don't want to be using Gemini. I want to be using Gmail and Google Maps and YouTube. And Gemini is the layer that makes it extremely seamless for me.
So actually the reason why they're doing it as well, to my understanding at least, is because they want to monetize that. Because the compute cost for AI is huge.
It's huge.
Gmail was free because they can monetize through ads.
Absolutely.
But now when I add AI on top of it, they want to name it a product because they are forcing or they're trying user to pay extra, that $1 or $5 or $10 per month, right?
Yeah.
So otherwise this compute cost is a massive cost to handle.
Yes, but as I said, like that's short term for a company like Google, because that's almost like saying, hey, when we came up with 2 GB, when Hotmail used to offer 2 MB, we had to charge for that storage. Because the storage cost itself, they predicted was just so low.
See, just let's put things in perspective. Total, all the top 4 internet companies approximately has invested $680 billion in this entire infra play.
Correct.
So it's a staggering amount of investment gone as compared to just giving a free memory of 2 GB or 4 GB.
Oh, absolutely.
So that is what everybody's struggling with, right? It's like creating the entire new city where you put in hundreds of billions of dollars into infra.
True.
So how do you monetize it, right? So that's the gap they're talking about. But it's a great point, right? So
it's like, I'm sure, and I wasn't alive in that conscious sense as it is happening right now. I'm sure these discussions were happening when people began to buy servers.
I have one last question for you. So what does the future of Ankur looks like in the creator economy?
Oh, they will. The future of Ankur in the creator economy is that there will be no Ankur.
Right.
And the thoughts and the words and experiences of Ankur will float in the universe, and they could be picked up. Like, I will run my own service.
Yeah.
So if Avanti is like, you know what, I really like Ankur's experiences, and I would just want to marry that with my way of music and art. So can I just buy the subscription of Ankur as an AI? And she will have it. So her art will become Ankurish, or Ayushish, or Manavish. Ankur as a service, like, because no, we're not getting there. But it's I feel that there is this, it'll become a power law like nobody has seen before. The top creators will attract the clout of being able to service themselves. So Ronaldo will and a Mr. Beast would. They will no longer be creators, but because of the cloud that they've built over years, they'll be able to sell them as a service or a product. And then there'll be this massive long tail. They'll be using them and riding them to build their infrastructure of creation, whatever they care about. And that for me is the universe. It's the exact same thing, by the way, and because I'm so passionate about education, I love this, and all of you have to watch this interview. Elon Musk, and he's just asked about his opinion on education. He has the wildest ones, and I love him for that. He said, have you seen the movie Dark Knight? And it's like, yeah, I've seen it. Like, did you love it? It's like, of course I loved it. I said, imagine if I gave you the exact same script of Dark Knight to every single theater in the US, and I said, go and make your own production. It would be a terrible experience, because based on the money that they have, they would choose their actors, they would choose their music, they would choose their visual effects, blah, 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 blah. Exact same script. That's exactly how education is today. Where Isaac Newton and Einstein and Madame Curie, they've done their job. And all we are learning is exactly the same thing, but our experiences are so different depending on where we went to, whether it was Harvard or some random Warikoo Institute of Management, and just had a shitty experience and so on. Education should not be like that. So my prediction for education is that the best professors in the world will be the only teachers we'll ever need. So the chemistry ones and the economy ones and the creator ones, and they will have their own avatars which will be teaching the entire world what needs to be taught. And there'll be this massive long tail of tutors who will be teaching in every housing society and in every abandoned now college university campus, including the IITs, and be like, hey, we have the office hours for Professor Marshall's chemistry class 101 from 5 to 6.
It's almost like Jedis, right? It's word of Jedis. We have few ones who know what to do. But I would also fear what there'll be one Darth Vader also will come out of it.
There'll always be one. There'll always be one. There will be one killer, whosoever it is, call him.
Because then the
give him
distribution
name.
also go other way around, right?
It will always
guy-
be that way.
Yeah.
It will become hyper consolidated.
But with that, thank you very much, Ankur.
No,
to
thank you
being
for
on the
having
show.
me.
Really,
Thank you.
thankful to be here and helping with the mission. And we'll
Absolutely.
definitely call you back again for a longer session.
Absolutely.
I know you have to be somewhere today.
No, thank
And
you
just
for
also
sparing
very
time
much.
and,
But we'll continue discussion with these three
Absolutely.
people. So Avanti, you are coming from the world of music and technology, of course, and we just were talking about the whole platform that you're creating for this thing. So how does the impact on music industry has been from your vantage point of AI? I was listening to this app called suno.com,
Yeah.
where you can generate your lyrics, music, and
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely.
So how you seen that changing, and what does future look like that for you as a creator who is at the intersection of music and tech?
Yeah, I think music especially is an interesting space, right? Because any video IP you create is IP, but music also has the layer of multiple different types of IPs and multiple stakeholders, right? In terms of the composition side and all these other things. Like I was saying earlier about generative AI, I do think that it is going to be easier to generate a song, right? In the sense that if you want to write a song tomorrow, Manav, you can write a brilliant song using AI. And you could also even clone your voice and have that space. The difference though with music and any of these offline sort of spaces is that human touch of live performance still exists, right? And people want that experience. You were telling us earlier about how you were in this 20-person room with John Legend in front of you, right? And even if it weren't John Legend or somebody well known, if kisi ki awaaz, it touched your soul, that will always still stick, right?
Yeah.
And so I think with music specifically, why is there such a craze of all these people going to Coldplay, for example? It's because they want that live experience. You want to listen to Yellow, you can sit on your bed, listen to it on repeat, right? But it's about experiencing that, not just seeing somebody live, but with other people. And that community feel. So I think, yes, it's going to actually disrupt anything generative, right? So the songwriting space, even production for that matter. Production used to be a very expensive proposition and a very specialized skill. But again, the producers who are able to be intersectional, who are able to perhaps be producers who know how to merge multiple different styles together in a very unique way, like the storytelling lens from a music perspective, or the ones who are able to direct AI. It's like, if I'm getting AI generated bongos better than having to hire a bongo artist, I might do that. But I need to be able to know how to tune that in the way that it exists, right? And again, so in the music space, you have music softwares, which are called DAWs. And AI adjacent tools have always existed, right? So if I'm using, you might have heard of GarageBand at the basic, or Logic Pro X or Pro Tools, I'm already able to generate certain sounds and libraries. And now with an AI layer on top of that, I will be able to generate a whole production. But that empathy, taste-based space, you're still going to need people to direct taste. And so, this honestly, India has always had the concept of a music director. Whereas that doesn't really exist in other parts of the world. But this idea of a music director or a creative director or a film director, but in all sorts of things, content director, creative director, I think that's going to be the future of a lot of these arts-based spaces, and that live experience, because that's going to come back manifold. And you're seeing that over and over and over again, right? People want intimate experiences. They don't want concerts in a large scale. If they do, okay, they're there for that feeling, right? Because that feeling, sure, you can kind of replicate it through AI and through the meta world, and you'll be able to see things more brilliantly. Maybe even your audio experience spatially will be better. But it's not the same experience as you and your friend losing your voice, screaming out that song at the top of your lungs. And that, y'all are going to Coldplay. I'm sure that's in
Precisely
part.
why.
I was convincing Ganesh yesterday that he has to come, one of our friends, because it's not the songs. It's not even like Chris Martin. It's experiencing that emotion together in the same room.
And you can all sit and vibe to Yellow again, right? In the same room. But that's a very different, okay, I'm going on a ride, I'm doing my giddy situation versus I am there experiencing it and elevating. Because that is truly, I think, what historically animals, species, human species, we've all connected over art. Music, dance, it's been our mating calls, right? It's been what has brought people together. It's been the sound of our celebrations and our wars. And it's one of those few things that ignites this really just beautiful emotional experience in you and this soul-stirring experience in you that is really hard to replicate anywhere else.
I have a question for Avanti. Let's say a song that AI creates by somebody who's not from the music industry actually tops the chart versus the song which is created by somebody months and months of effort.
Yeah.
How will this artist feel?
I mean, this artist will feel the same way that a lot of traditional artists were feeling about creators, right? I'll give you an example. Before I was in the creator industry, I've been a musician, performing artist. My start was in theater in the creative world. And within the music spaces, the second I started YouTube in 2020, I was considered a sellout by the traditional music spaces. They're like, oh, you're now a creator, you're now this, you're now that. And now people are realizing, shit, if I want distribution, I probably should do that as well, right?
Yeah.
And so that happened historically in museums with art curators, right?
Yeah.
And now digital art. So I think that is just going to continue to happen. There will be an AI song that will top the charts, for sure, right? That's just going to happen.
Yeah.
It's more about, again, as an artist, what is your unique value? And what is your unique community and connection, right? Because yes, we all love, who are your favorite artists, for example?
I love Arijit Singh.
You love Arijit Singh?
Yeah.
Why?
Because there's this magic around his music. The lyrics are great. When he performs, it was like soulful.
Yeah.
He didn't get tired for like 3.5 hours of playing. It was like magical.
I agree. So his music, already, he doesn't compose himself.
Yeah.
His lyrics, already, he doesn't write himself, right? And you know that if you look at the credits.
Yeah.
But for you, it's that experience and that unique tonal quality of his voice, which, maybe now you can replicate to some degree with AI, but it's a different thing when it's also associated with someone's story.
Yeah.
It's why, even in India, right, typically the musicians used to be playback singers. And we know an Arijit and a Shreya, and we know all of these people because they have hundreds and hundreds of songs. But the importance is for the face to match the voice. And now beyond that, you'll have AI being able to do face and voice. Your unique story, your unique offering, and your unique community, right, is really what will drive it. Because if you think about it, why is Taylor Swift so popular? Right? She's one of the biggest brands in the entire world.
Yeah.
She is a businesswoman through and through.
Correct.
And is she the most amazing singer? Maybe hot take, no. Right? Is she a great songwriter? Yes. Is she prolific? Maybe not. But it's about how she's been able to take that sense of, who am I catering to? Am I still relatable? She is 10 years older than me. Okay? And still able to cater to that same
I'll give you my experience. So I
community.
saw Taylor Swift in 2014 at Met Stadium in New Jersey. My takeaway was, so she is not probably the best singer.
Yeah.
Number one, lyrics are outstanding, at least for the generation around me and for me as well.
Yeah.
Relatability.
storytelling.
And her relatability, we were about 50,000 people in that.
Yeah.
And the way she's speaking, and if you see the recording, go back on YouTube of that, you will feel she's speaking to you one-on-one.
Yeah.
That's the kind of relatability she can have.
appeals to you.
Yeah, when she is giving a concert to 50,000 people.
And she makes you feel like you're singing to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's about her story, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Even as a creator, there is one lens, like let's take Ankur, right? For example, if Ankur continued down this is your best mutual funds, this is your whatever, he would have grown, but after a point, he would have plateaued.
Yeah.
It's because he shares stories about him and his wife, him and his kids, who is he as a human?
Yeah.
Because, you're going to have a bot talking about any kind of information and you're able to generate that through Claude, ChatGPT. I mean, he's doing that anyway, but it's that Ankur as a service because you're connecting with Ankur.
Correct.
And you've seen that in the music industry for years, which is, it's about the story of that person. You know their trials and tribulations. And that's also a scary place to be in. I mean, I personally have had to take a step back over the couple of years to protect my own mental health, but I used to be very open about my personal life and a bunch of other things, right? And that comes with its pros and cons. It creates this deep sense of connection that people feel. But it also comes with a lot. And the way that the internet has evolved, especially in India, given that in any given household, more so the male children have access than female children do to phones and devices just because of our systems. 70% of users on the internet are men versus women, right? And it's created this culture, for lack of a better word, this incel culture with a lot of young men. There's amazing young men too, but there's a lot of them who've just been, honestly, they're products of the patriarchal system too, where they believe that they're entitled to anything and everything, including somebody's body, right? Including, and so the kinds of comments you get as a woman on the internet, whether you are public or not, is just absolutely ridiculous. And that is why safety is important. You were talking about Apurva having, almost all female creators or artists or people, if you talk to them, they'll all have restrict words. You kind of have to, right? Otherwise, imagine every single day you're reading something that is just not true, right? It bleeds into your psyche. Yeah. And so I do think, however, that empathy piece you were talking about, it's that personal connect. Like, who am I as a human being? Like someone, for example, you recently announced that you got engaged. Congratulations, by the way. Some person may have come across that post randomly because they love stories. And then they may have discovered you. For all you know, that's a random lead gen funnel,
Yeah.
right? And they might be like, oh, I'm invested in this power couple who's now whatever. They may not give a shit about Owl Media, but they'll care about Owl Media's story because it's associated with you.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
it's so about how do we humanize our stories around people? It's like the founder stories. Why do we revere founders so much? Because we know what it's taken for them to build what they've built. You know?
I think it's one of the reasons why personal branding is becoming so big, right?
Absolutely.
Because a Swiggy and a Zomato, like one does one unique feature, the other one catches up like this,
Very
right?
quickly.
So story of how you put your company out there becomes extremely important. So what you're saying is, while an AI might top the chart, might create equally good music, for artists, what's going to be even more important is to tell their story, because AI will never be able to do that, right? Like,
persona is not replicable.
I think the issue is, see, if you look at the storytelling, right? So storytelling also evolved in the last 10 years. Now people are telling more and more stories. So there's going to be a plethora of stories. And suddenly there's too much content of stories as well.
Yeah.
I think what goes missing is the honest conversation.
Yeah, when we say stories, it's not about storytelling, because now there's a formula for storytelling.
Therefore, I'm just objecting to the personal branding side. There are a lot of my friends saying, oh, I want to hire this personal brand. I'm a contrarian in the room. I said, don't do that, bro, because what's going to happen is that you're going to now put something artificial context, somebody else to write for you, somebody else to market you. It'll work, you will feel very nice, a lot of dopamine will come in. But will you stick around? Is it really you, right?
Yeah.
So I think having the honest conversation is where I think the real challenge lies. And that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast as well. Having a real and honest conversation of where things will
What you're saying is right. Again, since you were asking if there's someone watching who wants to become a creator or get into that space, today, even if you have money, you want to hire a team, all of that, you can. But the best way to do anything, right? And if you think about it, think of founder mode, think of all of these spaces, you have to do it yourself, and you have to own all of the departments yourself and know exactly. You can hire somebody to do your social media, but that's never going to replicate this honest voice. Because storytelling, everyone knows in the first 3 seconds, some motion, some big text, everything yellow, like whatever, right? But that's all going to go out of the window. So there's a formula. And those formulas get old. And what people are, it's why, I don't know if y'all have heard, maybe, Manav, I'm curious, but your daughter probably knows, there's this YouTuber called Emma Chamberlain.
Of course.
Right? And she basically does nothing, in the sense that she does everything by doing nothing. It's all about the mundanity of her everyday routine. She makes coffee every day. You know, now she has launched a coffee brand because she does that. She will talk about, like, she'll burp in every video maybe 50 times.
Right.
And maybe now it's become intentional, but the point is, this is unfiltered. It's why vlogs will always exist. We were talking about behind the scenes content, all of that. Because everyone's tired of seeing this polished version, right? And as much as a space there is for the avatar persona, and I think that's really important, I think that's a funnel. And that will be a funnel to that real, even what is real, right? But real, unfiltered, honest, raw.
voyeurism will go up in the world of AI.
Voyeurism will go up in the world of AI. Voyeurism, and I'm curious if any of you feel this way. Maybe you feel this way in a lot of your startup networks. You know, since y'all are creators yourself, like one of the weirdest experiences about being a creator is feeling like I'm constantly surveilled. Like I go anywhere. I'm on a flight. I wear a mask as well, just like a health perspective, but also because sometimes you want some level of anonymity, right? And it's not a, oh my God, you're getting mobbed constantly situation. It only depends on where you are, but it's more just, you know, someone has even maybe for 2 seconds seen your face somewhere. They'll have that curiosity. And I feel like I'm constantly on, no matter where I am.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a very strange...
That stimuli can really tire you.
It really can.
But that's the phenomena. Moment you are in a social media, right?
Yeah.
I'm calling social media as the TV, right? So now social media is like a TV. If my son or daughter is watching it all the time, right?
Absolutely.
So the curiosity level is going to increase because you are the recent stars or the stars of the future, right? As against only the stars which you heard as Bollywood in the traditional term.
Yeah.
So I think your entire interaction construct is also going to change. So society is going through massive wave of change, underlying change, right? So therefore, you are the people who will be mobbed, you will be popular.
I have had people come up and say, oh my God, my phone's come to life, right? And I'm like, whoa, that's a very bizarre. And it also depends on, we try our best to be approachable. That's how I am as a person. I'm incredibly friendly. I love bringing people together. That's the core of everything that I do. And so people feel really comfortable coming up, which is amazing. And I'm really grateful for that. It's this added layer of having to think about your safety beyond just being a woman in all circumstances, right? And it's just an interesting world. And I'm curious how, with technology and AI and innovation, I feel this is somebody who has actively consented to be on a public platform, put myself out there. But for people who have not, For your everyday person, what is it
Yeah.
going to do?
Yeah.
Right?
So I think the construct of privacy is itself undergoing
Yeah.
a massive change
Now is
itself,
a-
right?
Absolutely.
Privacy in, so if you look at it, the stars went through that whole thing where they have private lives and public life. Politicians went through that. But I think when it comes down to the next layer, which all of you are, I think the whole context of privacy will need to change quite a bit.
Yeah.
And how do you live your lives will totally change.
Yeah.
So that has, but that obviously we'll see how that evolves. But it's a great point. Jivraj, how are you seeing things from the LP side?
Yeah.
Of course, you have just recently developed this
Yeah.
whole channel of monetization, so to speak, or
Yeah.
bringing the LP pool into younger or new startups, right?
Yeah.
So I would understand what is the sentiment of LPs, right? How are they thinking about it?
I think they're also recognizing that things are evolving so fast that you have to step it up and be a part of the wave. And so what I'm constantly seeing is parts of the value chain which are getting automated are getting disrupted by not just startup founders, but also by creators turning founders, founders turning startup. I think Shark Tank India is a great example of how, founders who were not glorified earlier are trying to now become creators, and people are replicating their lifestyles. We're talking about creators being the new age stars, but it's now founders as well. The reason why entrepreneurship is now sexy, aspirational, more giving, and also the more in career is because we see an Aman Gupta of boat, right? And we wonder that what would his life be like? And so we want to replicate that side of the process. So I think in a world where also content is becoming very easy to generate, right? Like a lot of us spoke about, generation is not the bottleneck. You have to figure out what is it that you stand out with. So Aman, for instance, he's built like 8 years, 9 years, he's built a 3,000 crore company. But now it's taken the public media to recognize what Boat does, what Aman does, and Aman to become an aspirational figure. So it's not just enough to do high quality substance work, but it's also the second level questions to how do you put it out there? What is the presentation form? And I think one lower common denominator that we all spoke about but didn't articulate is this: there's no substitute to time, right? Like it's taken years for Ankur to actually establish credibility. So you can't just like shortchange your life by creating AI avatars and be like, okay, in a year, I'll create a great brand. Because the way to not dupe the audience and where the audience is smart is when they see the same thing consistently over a period of 5, 10, 15 years, then they know it's credible, right? Like Arijit Singh, it's credible after decades of effort. Same with many other artists. So I think one common denominator is be consistent and just do, or if you're authentic, even if you're using AI to shortchange parts of the process, there is no replication to who your persona is. And within that value chain, so within the generation space, there are many companies. I've seen maybe like, 20 decks who talk about this post-production layer. Currently, I maybe put out like 40 reels a month out, right? From my podcast. So I record like 4 podcasts, I'll put out 40 reels. But there are constantly softwares which are talking about, hey, we'll give you reels. Put a 1 hour video, we'll give you reels from it. Put a 1 hour video, we'll give you a transcript from it. Put a 1 hour video, we'll give you a ChatGPT version of that video, so that the transcript can be asked questions on. So one thing that I want to work upon, and in fact Gayatri is helping us out, is can we do an Indian Silicon Valley GPT which can help any founder to access the repository of 210 episodes, so that you can prompt the GPT to be like, hey, I want to understand founder insights on hiring. Can you help me with that, right? So if content is going to be open source, what are you going to do with that becomes a great question. So a lot of pages are being formed, by the way, which are human-less, but only edit first, which talk about just publishing. You take parts of videos, you take the best parts, and you put it out there, you create distribution for yourself. So you don't even need a person, we've invested in a company called Gan.ai, which is a rephrase competitor, and they just recently launched sort of AI agents, which is a HeyGen competitor, where you can, release a video and it's very, very accurate to a great degree. So I think broadly what I'm seeing on ground is investors are super excited about new age media services companies, something like what Owl is doing right now, new age generation and all parts of the content journey being automated, which is post-production, generation, transcripts, multiple of these. And as a creator, what I'm trying to do is partly trying to understand that, hey, if generation is not where I have to generate alpha, what are the insights from distribution that would be valuable? So, I mean, I would argue that even at, a lower scale than many other podcasters, having a niche audience helps. So can you be more intentional in saying where you're serving, right? So I think some of those foundational decisions will become more important than thinking about parts of the process that earlier would generate alpha. Earlier, like 5 years back, if you were doing a highly produced video with great insights, you'd probably generate more likes, more distribution. But that is now a common denominator for everyone. So that's not where the differentiator lies. It maybe lies in the quality of audience. It maybe lies what you do after the piece of content is out. It maybe lies in how deep you are in the domain that you're at. I am highly likely to trust a health expert who actually has a health background than an XYZ person who's also giving me health advice, but does maybe not practice it, maybe does not come from a health domain. And so I would question the credibility that that person stems from. So I think some of these foundational decisions become very important. If, for instance, Avanti starts doing content on, I don't know, software, right? Suddenly that becomes a change for me if she goes away from her music niche, her social taboo lane. If he talks about more than marketing, right? He'll talk about many different spaces, but let's say he talks about art tomorrow, right? I'll probably question why Ayush is doing so, and that will bring a point of, doubt to me.
Yeah.
So I think some of these foundational decisions will become important for all creators, and so startups who are able to leverage these things will also be able to
Say,
benefit.
what I've often seen is the challenge also comes with consumer, because when the content is so omnipresent, what you're looking for also becomes the challenge. See, previously I can find my way through multiple things, because even if I don't know, I will have 5 things to evaluate. I'll quickly see and I'll understand what I'm looking for. But now when the content is 100,000 or 1,000 times more than what I'm looking for in every sphere of life, what I'm looking for, the clarity in that also becomes really, really important. And that's the reason we were talking more about human sensibilities become really important in that aspect.
I have 2 broader predictions for content. Number one, and Jivraj briefly mentioned, right, which is, it's called the dollar value of your follower. Where we are moving towards is gaining 100,000 followers or 1 million followers is going to become easier. There, what will matter is the dollar value of your follower, right? For example, I'll take Sarthak Ahuja's example. He's now at about 2 odd million, followers. Does not monetize directly at all. Jivraj talked about direct and indirect monetization. Direct is that I am making content and I promote this plant company. That, hey, buy this plant, and the plant company pays me, let's say, 1 lakh rupees to promote it. Sarthak rarely does any of that, but still makes a lot of money from content because of the indirect monetization opportunities. He looks at content as a trust generating platform, right? If I'm giving so much free information out there in the world, I can then ask for some money. He does workshops where he sells like 50, 60 lakhs of inventory of that workshop in like 2 to 3 days. Days, not even weeks. So that's number one, right? Which is the dollar value of your followers will value a lot more. So I feel if you're somebody who's looking to become a creator and looking at this as a big opportunity, try to think what is a high value audience that is not catered to. Let's say what you spoke about, let's say 45 to 65-year-old, not catered to really high value. Even if you have 10,000 followers, but if these 10,000 followers have the capacity to pay you 1 lakh each every single year, that's a lot of money. And that's crores of revenue with just a few thousand followers. Second is, 10 years ago when I started creating content, I could create content without any expertise. Content creators would just start creating content for the sake of it because there weren't enough people speaking on the internet. So you could just be a face who knows how to speak, and you could speak about anything and you would gain following and you would make money. That's, by the way, the early YouTubers. None of them are experts and they're still quote unquote celebrities now. This will not last long. Now we will start questioning, which is what Jivraj also mentioned, that you know what, you can't become a content creator for the sake of a content creator. What is the backing? What is it that you are doing alongside it? So to all the kids, and by the way, a lot of kids today want to become a content creator. Astronauts are out of trend. Nobody wants to become an astronaut. People want to become a content creator. I think that's a doomed path. Because if your life mission is to become a content creator, then you're optimizing for basically a journalist job. That will not guarantee you outlier success. To get outlier success, you need to master some craft. That could be music. That could be understanding of startups. That could be understanding of business or marketing. So you need to, I think every single large content creator who will make a lot of money in the next 10 years will have something alongside content creation to support it.
I think so why don't we think to that point, why don't we think other way around? So gain, if you're a young founder or a young audience between 16 year plus, why don't you learn a craft first and then see how to do content on top of it?
Precisely.
Because what I am seeing among my children, my son who's 16-year-old and my daughter is 19-year, that awareness is not there because of the glamour of social media that you spoke about, right?
Exactly.
If people see you, people are, recognizing you in public, everybody gets, see the glamorous side of it,
course.
right? But they don't know that you went to Harvard and then you had a craft in music, which you, along with Berkeley School of Music, you develop your music sense. And then you kind of become a creator later on, I think. So that journey is also important to highlight. And therefore, I'm kind of interrupting you and talking about that journey, right? So today, I think if you learn a craft first, and then you build on top of it various monetization engines, whether it's content or you become a VC or you become a song or music writer or you run a media agency. I think that is a better path for younger generation to take.
I do want to also add on there where there is a craft that is the ability to connect people, right? And so, like you were saying, if Ayush starts talking about art, I think that's great because I like Ayush's insights so long as he's able to bring on expertise in that space, right? If he starts talking about it, I mean, art, he's actually, in my opinion, qualified to talk about. But let's say, I don't know, he starts talking about...
Ayush is a target.
Let's say he starts talking about dentistry for whatever reason, right? Because you have great teeth, right? So people will be like, oh, great. Now, if you're able to bring on dentists, right? Or people who had that craft, that's the intersectionality I'm talking about, right? I don't think we need to be like, because what frustrated me as a kid, and I don't know if you agree with this, was when you're a kid, the world's your oyster. Do everything from drawing to painting to sports to this to that. Then the older you get, focus on your studies, choose one thing. Then the older you get, focus on your job and monetization. And then what happens to play? What happens to match? That's why this was created in the first place.
But Avanti,
right?
I'll tell you the challenge there is you were lucky enough or you worked hard enough to find out what is good for you and what really resonates and make money from it, right? But it's extremely hard at the age of 16 or 19 to really understand what is really you are good for, right? So
I think it's less about, I guess the way I have always constructed my life, or I've seen people I admire, is they have a very inherent sense of both passion and purpose. And they don't have to be the same thing, right? Your passion is, if money were no object in the world, what is it that you would get up every day and do? And that can be anything. And actually, for me, I'll give you an example. It's not even music. It's not even any of these other things. For me, it's people. The thing that gives me the most joy in life is connecting people to each other and to opportunity. And music is an expression of that because I love being on stage. Everything else I'm building right now, the stuff we talked about offline, the goal is how do you connect people, right? And that I know is my passion. And the purpose, where does that come from? I think that sense of purpose we develop over time. But I've realized that in life, the most expensive thing is a sense of purpose. You see incredibly successful people, CEOs, founders, whatever it is, when they're about to retire, they're like, what is the point of life? Right?
So to that point, you have seen the recent blog from the founder of Loom.
Yeah, it made me really frustrated.
$9 million.
It made me
And he's saying, I don't know what I'm for, right? He tried everything. He went and worked for Doge for 4 weeks. He spent $60 million in one go. So he's tried 5 things saying, I have no purpose, right?
But that's because he's thinking of himself as the individual, right? In the sense like, yes, but a purpose, in my opinion, needs to come from something bigger. And that's why you'll see some of the most satisfied people in the world are those who have a purpose, say from something spiritual or from family or community or whatever it is, right? And I think for a lot of people, in my opinion, privilege is power, right? And a lot of us run away from privilege. That word has become this
taboo.
I have grown up with a lot of privilege. It is true. It is a fact, right? If I were to not acknowledge that fact, I'm speaking untruth. And I know that. And there's a few different approaches. One approach is you can say, okay, I will shy away from this privilege, run away from it, right? And that's about it because we've glorified this idea of being self-made. There are incredible people in this world who did not have support and access and community, but most people are not self-made. It's the village that supports you, whatever that village is. And everybody has a sense of that, right? So if you run away from that privilege and say, I will completely reject it, you are in fact rejecting your power. The second is to be lazy with it, right? And you're just like, okay, fine, I'm privileged. I will just go enjoy all the luxuries of life. Fine, if that's what you want and your purpose is to have enjoyment, great. But I think the best kind of way to access that is to be like, it comes with power. It comes with the fact that, my starting point was here versus a lot of people are here. Okay, what does that mean? How am I able to reduce this gap? How am I able to build things, create value, like you were talking about, whether that's in the form of jobs, whether that's in the form of awareness, access, whatever it is, to help reduce that gap, right? So if I've come on this earth for whatever reasons, whatever my luck is, if you believe in all of these destiny factors, how am I doing my small part, whatever that is, to help reduce that access gap? And that can come from any space. I think the first time I realized it meaningfully, I've lived my life between different countries, right? And I realized it because when I moved to India, I was quite young, but old enough to question everything around me. And nobody was answering my questions because they'd become so sensitized to the way that the structure works, right? The way that inequity works. I have experienced a lot of health difficulties in my life, and frankly, the only reason I'm alive today is because my parents could afford care and had access to good care. Otherwise, I would not be here. And so it was always on my mind that, wow, that's a huge privilege, right? To just even exist, which a lot of people don't have. So what can you do? At the very basic level, okay, health, privilege. Do you live a life that embodies health? Step one. Number two, if you've had access to understanding your own body, your own health in a specific way, how are you talking about that? It can be the simplest of things, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, you have to be a founder, you have to be a creator, you have to be this, you have to that. Do you embody it in your daily life?
Yeah, so your life experience kind of shaped your thinking and the way you...
Absolutely, and I think that everybody has that unique life experience. I don't think a 16-year-old doesn't. Yeah. I think a 16-year-old has things that shape that. Yeah. And it's just about clarifying that, finding it, and that sense of guidance, right? Not chasing the next shiny thing. Yeah. But being like, who am I? What do I care about? What are the tools I can leverage and build to learn about that? And then, kind of going from there.
I think the power of privilege now, because of social media, has also gone to tier 3, tier 4 towns, right?
Correct. Yeah,
so what you call as, so you can get privilege either by your legacy with your parents or your grandparents, or you can get with the way the country is shaping up. So I think that particular opportunity, every single individual has who's witnessing the current change, and especially in India, right, where we're building most of the things right now. So I think great opportunity. So that I think I want to pivot to talking about the enterprise or brands leveraging social media. Yeah. How is that changing? India is going through a massive branding revolution, as you say, right? Yeah. When I was growing up, we only saw 2-3 brands, Hindustan Liver and Tata and everything else. We just consume everything from that. Yeah. And now we're seeing every day D2C, new brand get launched from skincare to beauty care to name it, right? And now with quick commerce, now we have quick commerce first brands, right?
Absolutely.
So how can the brands, how do you think that whole place will evolve? What roles creators will have to play in this entire, I would say, metamorphosis of branding of India, so to speak?
I feel brands are taking a lot of inspiration from creators. There is a large wave of humanization of a brand. 30 years ago, a brand spoke like a brand, which is that I'm slightly bigger than you. I'm, you would not even know. How many of you know the founder of Unilever? Probably, I don't think anyone would, right? But
I know. Because I read about it. So I'll tell you a small story behind it. So I came from a very small town, Moga in Punjab, which is really, really small. Yeah. And there was it very, very small. So the way I've learned is reading autobiographies. So in the 5 years of my life, I read about 50, 60 autobiographies. Of business people, of Napoleon, of historians. That's how I learned, by the way. That's one of the great medium to learn. Because in every, when you read so many autobiographies, including artists like Leonardo da Vinci, which is my favorite artist, you will see how they have gone through experimentation and working hard. Somebody made the point of continue to work hard, right? And therefore keep themselves relevant. Yeah. Anyway, before I go off topic, I just want to comment on that.
Continuing on the path, we did not know who were the people behind it. In fact, a great metric is, do you know the people behind Cipla or the large pharmaceutical companies? We don't. But we know the people behind the new age health brands. We know Shashank from Whole Truth. Everyone has seen him on the internet talk about how this is a healthy bar. We relate to it, we buy it. I was looking at the Whole Truth protein pack. It's manufactured by True Native. So it's the same protein as True Native, but I will not buy True Native. I will still buy Whole Truth. So the change that is happening in the content creation space for a brand is that they have realized that being perfect does not help in today's universe. Having a story to a brand, that helps. People buy a Fool agarbatti because of the story attached to the brand, not because it's the best agarbatti out there. So 2-3 things, if I had to summarize. One, we will see a lot more humanization. And when I say humanization, right now founder branding is a trend. I think it will go beyond. I think a company with 1,000 team members will have 1,000 marketeers. I feel every team member will talk about it. And that's happening, by the way, to Owl as well, where people are owning Owl as, this is my division, this is what I do in the company, and I want to talk about it. That's the number one stage. Second is, we will start seeing a lot of imperfect things. Look at the ads that people are running on Instagram anymore. They're not shiny. In fact, even like skincare ads are no longer under bright lights. They're very, very candid. They're showing imperfect skins, which, by the way, all of us have. So second is just perfect things will cease to exist. And by the way, all of these are inspiration from how creators grew. Creators came in and disrupted the traditional thought process that if you had to speak something to the audience, you had to be perfect, you had to be untouchable, you had to have a lot of just space around you. Creators said no. You can still sell, you can still relate, you can still build a large audience by just being you, by just being authentic. So I think a lot of this inspiration brands are drawing from these creators. And lastly, we are seeing this trend. We started Lit School, which is a creator school. Brands are hiring creators in-house. So a creator used to be this person who has distribution. But what people are now realizing is that creator is also a person who has a lot of skill. The skill to pick up the phone and be like, with this phone, I can make a video, upload it, gain distribution, sell your product all in 24 hours. Right? So we will see a lot of creators joining companies. So there's a huge opportunity if you are a creator for you to not just monetize your distribution, but for you to monetize the skill, because the skill is not there in the universe as much as brands need it. I would love to hear your perspective on B2B, because I'm seeing a huge shift in how B2B companies are changing it. But consumer companies, we are already seeing a huge shift.
See, in B2B, if you look at it, there is a larger trend of consumerization. So
Correct.
look at, we spoke about consuming more content.
Yeah.
Then we spoke about consuming more brands
Yeah.
in various forms, right? Whether protein to nails and whatever else you call it,
Yeah.
right? So everything is more and more consumption, more micro in nature, right?
Correct.
So when I'm a B2B company, I also have to follow the same trend of consumerization. That's the first thing. So when you log into an enterprise, right? Let's say when people come and log into Owl Media or people log into Together Fund, right? They're also expecting similar kind of simplicity. You spoke about imperfection, I call it simplicity.
Yeah.
That you start accepting simple but more usable things in your life rather than more artificial. So now how do you bring the same simplicity to a B2B user? Is where the connection is coming. So now once you establish that connect, it has to then come to the usage of any form of media or to explain a particular feature better.
Yeah.
If you look at it, that interface is becoming simpler and simpler, right? When I started my software journey 20 years back, it was very complex user interface, some 100,000 fields, and I have to click, remember what click will do what. So a lot of cause and effect on a single screen. Then came the word of cloud, where you have more workflow. The same single screen will get divided into 10 screens, but more workflow oriented, right? And then came the word of PLG, which is product led growth, where you can go one click and say, okay, my name is Manav, I like this, and I'm this user, and then suddenly it'll throw up a simpler screen to you, right? And now we're in the world of ChatGPT or generative AI, where chat is the interface, right? New interface, and there's a lot of complexity goes behind it. So therefore, now to establish yourself as a B2B company, you have to bring out the stories of your daily life, how software is being used.
Yeah.
So that usage of software is relating back to the content creation or the user story. If you look at the, how many of you saw Sam Altman's first developer conference? Did anybody see that?
Yep.
So what did he do in that? He brought in stories. If you look at, there were 5-6 stories that how is being used, right? So I think that is where the people, all of you as content creator have a lot of value to create. Where you bring in that, that how even a software product in B2B environment is being used, and therefore creating an impact on your enterprise, because your productivity further goes up, your loyalty goes up, right?
Correct.
So because when I think of from a user who's or an employee who's working to an organization, right? He's coming in, he's spending more time at an organization than at his home, right? Or his or her home. So therefore he's looking for his experience to be seamless. So for experience to be seamless, when we are in enterprise, you are dealing with software day in, day out, right? You log into your leave program, you log into your punch into your coming in, then you use your some form of cloud email software, you will use an accounting software, a CRM software. So when so any mid-sized organization use about 100 software, so that just to give you some idea. So now my experience has to be seamless. So organization who gives you a good environment, good composition, growth opportunity, but also give you a seamless experience is the organization which you would love to stay on with more and more, right? And that is where the next big opportunity for all the companies like you are, where you create stories around that. And the stories then get to the adoption among the enterprise is where the value is lying. Therefore, you're seeing more B2B companies also following this path.
Correct.
Yeah. I think it's worthy to mention that foundationally, the consumer has evolved to an extent where they're not interacting with brands just on an advertising board or just on a larger screen, right? When you're so used to consuming stuff on the smaller screen, which is what you're surrounded by, you're expecting things to not be what it was back then and be more relatable, be more authentic. We want to buy stories, not brands, which is why brands are becoming stories. And that's worth mentioning. So it's a ripple effect to say that the consumer is smarter today. She is giving more credit to...
See, also that the channel is same. See, I pick up my phone
Yeah.
and I can use Instagram and watch my reels for entertainment.
Yeah.
Same phone I'm using for my ChatGPT for my work.
Precisely.
Same phone I'm using for my email to send an email to all of you guys, right? Or using WhatsApp for business, right? So when the device is same, you're going to want similar experience across.
Precisely.
Yeah. Therefore, the stories
experience
have
can't be so diverse. in
Yeah,
nature.
That's what it's. So that's what.
Absolutely.
Therefore, you were seeing more traction on B2B side.
Yeah.
And globally, actually, it's even a bigger market. I want to come to that. Since I ran a global company,
Correct.
right? Today, talking about B2B companies who are more Indian in nature. But think about when we are building India for the world, which is the first podcast carried around, right? Somebody has to do marketing of that scale. How many have you been to California? Right, multiple times. You see Salesforce board every single time in one on one. Great ads, right?
Yeah.
Great ads. And I know Freshworks did that. Zoho does that in
Always
many things.
does
But
that.
many companies don't do that today.
Correct.
So if Indian companies have to become bigger brand even in B2B, they have to follow that path of not just billboard, but understanding the consumer, how to tell the story. And that is a multi-billion dollar industry, by the way.
Yeah.
Where Indian firms have not really cracked that. There's when at Eka, I worked very hard to look for an Indian branding agency. I could not find one. Ultimately, I gave $500,000 just for branding to the US company.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel people buying from people is going to become truer and truer, bigger and bigger as we move forward. Nobody wants to buy from like quote unquote an organization anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you humanize like for example, just if I talk about a very specific limited example, the last 1 year, the amount of companies that have reached out to us to just tell me that, hey, can you make a brand story video? I've never seen requests like these from really traditionally boring companies. We work with a lot of US companies, and most of the things that we're doing is just the founder coming in and saying that, hey, can we tell our story? Because product is no longer a differentiator for most.
No, but I'll just give a different perspective on that. That used to happen in the US Slack, for example. You go and look at it. They created a love ball on Twitter.
Yeah.
As a brand, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So they had look at the videos, amazingly good. So the US companies have been doing it actually.
I think for them, the US in general as a country has anything you can learn from them is marketing. They're able to market a stone, a shoe. It doesn't matter. And part of it is also the visibility that it creates, right? I'll give you an example. Now in the entertainment world, we've adopted calling what we call extras as background actors, right? But that was the norm, junior artists and background actors in the US. And I remember people would be like, hey, extra. But it's like, no, A, we are affording somebody a sense of respect. And B, you're able to kind of market anything and everything. And what a Salesforce is doing, you ask a random person in the US, have they heard of Salesforce? Their answer will be yes. Do you know what it does? I don't know, right? But it's almost like that kind of awareness and recall and value, which is once they interact with it in any kind of space they're in, that's going to be really important. And I think here we don't necessarily do that. In fact, it's some of this mentality, oh, like the tech world is the tech world, the business world is the business world, whatever, because of the way that the creator economy has disrupted it. Now you have all these conversations. But even, a conversation like this is really nice because it's also not only catering to a tech and founder audience, right? It's catering to a broader audience. And that's really important because otherwise everything feels inaccessible. And it feels like this layer. And I think the branding thing, right? Even if it's a B2B enterprise deal, it's the founder selling to the founder or the founder selling to the marketer or whatever it is. It's eventually the human talking about the product, even if it's their story with the product or the product story, and then another human buying into that, right? Because they know how directly it will help their user chain flow, whatever it is. I mean, it's why Loom, if we're doing a callback to that, even existed in the first place. Make a simple explainer video of explaining this feature. Otherwise, anybody using it needs to be able to, right from the front office staff to the back office staff, everyone needs to understand what it is. And I do think there's also going to be space for startups who are able to consolidate. Like if I, as a young startup, am using 5 different softwares. In my own personal brand, we use 5 different softwares. As I'm building a creative tech startup, I'm using like 10 different, right? There will be need and space for people who are able to consolidate all of them to speak to each other.
That, by the way, is happening through agents. So,
of course.
But I just want to come back on the opportunity a little bit more. So I think for the media agencies, and I have this personal experience in that, the reason the Indian media agencies are not able to crack so far is because A, nobody focused on it. B, requires a deep understanding of the user base.
Yeah, exactly.
See, like as a consumer media company, you are successful because some way or other you understand the Indian consumer really
deeply.
well. So you're able to cater to that while you are, like you talk about taste, right? So you're able to match the taste of a piece of content to the Indian consumer. So if an Indian media agency start understanding some dissection of or some segment of the user base in B2B, I think there's a big opportunity to create.
Yeah, it's that intersectionality. It's right, having somebody who is perhaps maybe an average coder but can help be that translator of what this product is to somebody else and vice versa. That is going to be the scope and idea.
So I have a question for you now. We're talking about 50 million creators today. Maybe in 10 years the number can become, who knows, 200 million, 300 million creators who are monetizing in a big way in a $100,000+ category. How about a platform? I know Patreon is one platform which is very successful now. They were struggling before, now they're beginning to gain really good traction. How about an opportunity for get a creator platform for India? Where the opportunities lie?
It hasn't happened yet in India after multiple attempts also, because I think
so many people have tried.
I mean, consumers are not willing to pay for a creator's time or expertise precisely. What consumers pay for in India is their own time, which is scrolling, which is why distribution goes up. There's access, there's followership, and there's large amounts of distribution. Yet monetization avenues for creators remain to be restricted, which are primarily brand deals, etc. How Ankur also broke down his revenue, the largest portion was brand deals. So I think it'll take some more time, as India also matures as a market. We're seeing brand growth right now because we've hit an inflection point where people are willing to pay for advanced products because lifestyles are evolving. We will also come to a point where they will value time more than they value, let's say, distribution or money, right? And that's when I think these platforms will evolve to a point where they will be able to sustain themselves. But currently, if you were to ask, does an Indian consumer value time or money more? It's probably they value money more, which is why they'll spend 3 hours, 5 hours just scrolling through the internet. Yet if they were to pay for an educational piece of content that Avanti does on music or Ayush does on, freelancing, education, marketing, etc., that wouldn't get as well monetized as their opportunities from brands.
So I just want to come in. I think education is though different for Indians. I think I am seeing, Ayush talking about GrowthX, right? Which is doing professional. So I think a lot of education on upskilling, which people are willing to pay.
Absolutely.
So I think
Ankur's example again is a great example.
In India, in the education space, people are either willing to pay for something that gives them a chapa or a service that helps them get a chapa, right? Or something which they're noticing, again, like you saw, coding boot camps in India were huge 5-10 years ago, because it's like, okay, that's the next skill that'll get you a job. Anything that will get you a chapa or a job. Right? A service or an actual, like, that's why the lit school, I think, is a great idea, right? All of these things, that's what people are willing to pay for, but they're not willing to pay for general access, because we expect...
Like no Reddit for India.
Yeah.
There cannot be any Reddit for vernacular language in India.
I think that people are not willing to pay for network access. Like, for example...
they're not willing to pay for network access like a Patreon.
Exactly.
Will there be vernacular platforms that come up? Companies like Local, which is like this hyper-local news platform, that's doing well. Companies like, Dashtones is in a different genre, but Dashtones is Web3, like
but
AI generated.
It's
very global in nature. There are Cuckoo FM, the people are paying for it. So I think enough people will pay for content which is niche. Will they be billion-dollar opportunities? That's questionable.
But I don't know if they have to be.
They don't have to be.
They don't
either,
have to
by
be,
the way.
right? If you're able to create something self, I think like India is one of the most ripe ecosystems in the world
to create smaller businesses.
For smaller businesses, small, medium, large, just to create business, economic opportunity in general.
Absolutely.
Individuals can be businesses, right? Like if you think of the tourism industry, for example, I'm somebody who can create a unique experience in this part of the country that is untapped. I'm able to create a business out of that. Like if you are somebody who has an enterprising mindset, you can be an entrepreneur doing anything, right? Small, medium, big. And I think because, again, entrepreneurship is now sexy. When you started, it was not sexy. And you
won't get married if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. You were focused on value prop and value creation. And now because everyone's hearing about the exit and the unicorn and this and that, the average kid knows what that word is.
Precisely.
But it's like, as a creator we were talking about, where are you chasing being a creator? Are you chasing attempting to be a unicorn and all of these things? Or are you chasing creating value?
Yeah.
And that's at the end of the day, right? What matters even at the smaller and bigger scales.
So
the theme of the conversation is also precisely that.
So the reason I'm asking this question is because I believe some of the creators who have a great sense of the audience and are good in tech also could actually create such platforms as well.
I actually slightly disagree from Jivraj's point of view. I do think there are opportunities to build in the ecosystem, but maybe not $1 billion as you rightly mentioned. I think where it depends is where are you getting the revenue from? in India, if the revenue you are expecting the content consumer to, if that's your primary source of revenue, then those platforms have failed. But I feel the platforms that will work are the people who are tapping the revenue stream between brand and creator. Is there a platform that can be built in the midst of that? Because even a 5% pie of this, is a multi-hundred crore revenue output. Similarly, I can tap a creators ecosystem. Creators are making a lot of money. I would happily pay for a mini chat, which allows me to get into my consumers direct. I don't know if you know this software called ManyChat. It's a really, really nice software, which is now flagged by Instagram, which is a different story. But extremely helpful software. I would happily pay for it. I would happily pay for a Substack subscription because it allows me to get closer to my audience. So I feel it really depends who the entrepreneur is and where they are, thinking that they will get their revenues from. If they are thinking that they will get revenue from the general consumer, I don't think, at least at this point, it has worked or it will work. But if you're somebody who is defining and getting revenue from the gap between brands and creators, from the creators themselves, there are many opportunities to build. I mean, look at Wishlink, right? I think they're onto something. I don't know how they will scale further, but Wishlink, the consumer does not pay anything.
No.
But the creator earns, the brand benefits, and overall the ecosystem grows, right?
Yeah.
That is a really interesting space to build a company in. So yeah, I think since there's a lot of money in advertising which flows from the brand, like imagine so much money spent on performance marketing, even if you were to get 1% of that pie, that's a really large business.
Absolutely.
Right? We have seen global businesses being built जो सिर्फ एक छोटा सा एरिया ऑप्टिमाइज करते हैं परफॉर्मेंस मार्केटिंग का, charge a 2% fee. That's a huge hundreds of millions of dollars.
So that area is getting disrupted. We can speak more about it. Let's go into the field of the B2B businesses.
Yeah,
so there are a lot of,
I mean, to Ayush's point only, just summarizing, a bunch of like freelancers, agency owners in India win and have created like multi-million dollar opportunities purely because they're capturing into these value chains. Yeah. So I think is it possible to build a platform or pay for access for a creator? Maybe not. Where there is a possibility is whereas there's high trust, like Sarthak's example he mentioned. Education people pay for. People pay for services, right? Like, I mean, Food Darzi is a good example of like a creator.
I think the two areas is education and entertainment.
Yeah.
So people are paying for both the things. I also bring your attention to the back end of those softwares, right?
Yeah.
So like HeyGen. Why HeyGen is becoming such a big company? Because so there are a lot of opportunity to create actually the back end tools, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like Runway, which was competition to Sora. Sora is coming now.
Yeah.
We will see how Runway does. But then we will see. So I think there are a lot of opportunity for all these people who understand tech first. And can understand the audience also. There are a lot of tools for the entire creator economy and entertainment industry, which also is a big industry, right?
Industry, yeah.
We've invested in a company which does creator travel. So they've created a platform that helps creators open up a different channel of monetization. Let's say Avanti wants to take 30 of her followers to a large trip to, let's say, Berkeley School of Music, right? And she wants to charge a couple of lakhs per person for that trip. She definitely has 30 people who will go for it. But she doesn't want to like coordinate with them. She doesn't want to take the hassle of, making the bookings, etc. This platform will actually do the automation of all of this and take a part of the pie. And they've done like 5-6 trips now. They're making good money. They'll be able to build $1 million business pretty significantly in like a 2-3 year time span. And this is like making the creator's life extremely easy. So if you're targeting that value chain also, right, simplification and convenience always pays, right? Yes. So if creators are making money and if you're making their lives simple, effective, impactful, creating value, they are happy to, and as long as it's not coming from their pocket, they're happy to give you a part of the additional pie. So Avanti was not making money from travel earlier. Now she is. She's giving a part of that to another company, which makes complete sense. So I think these are innovative ways to sort of create smaller companies with extremely, like we know another agency, right, that Ayush has incubated. They are creating value by doing 3D animation, a bunch of very specific editing and production things because those aren't automated yet by software. And I mean, at some point they will, but they'll probably build expertise in that area as well. And that Ayush is leading the chart for. So I think these are more specific things that you could target.
So I think, whichever way I think I'm very excited with this conversation that there's real opportunity for million by million, right?
Yeah.
1 million Indian creators / small businesses, at least started by doing 1 million a year, and then the sky is the limit from there, right? So you can continue to grow. So I think I want to bring the last segment on the mental health, which is a topic which is very favorite to me. I have seen my journey, which is very difficult, and a lot of fellow founders. and it's not much talked about as yet. So to understand, in your journey, all of you are very, very young right now, so I don't know how your journeys have been, but how do you handle this entire, mental health issue which you go through, or self-doubts as you build your journeys? So I'll have to spend a few minutes on that, to whatever extent you can talk.
Sure. I mean, I don't know if it was as intense for me, but in the early days of doing the podcast, my podcast hasn't grown as fast. So it's taken me about 3.5, 4 years to get to some amount of scale where it gets recognition. And in the early days, it wasn't receiving as much distribution. And so there were moments of doubt, moments of, questioning whether or not you're in the right track. And so that was what I faced, as not as much amount of perhaps hate or things around that lens. And so my recourse was always that, I mean, in those 5% moments of doubt, you have to go back to the 95% of why you did this, why you started it, what you feel in moments of recording. Like in the 2 hours that I record a podcast, I'm probably in a state of flow that I can never otherwise feel. And that is precious. So I wouldn't let go of that. So I think the only short way to just target some of these low points are perhaps to go back to the highs. There are enough highs if you're doing the right things with the right fundamentals. And if you can fall back on them in moments of doubt, I think that's very eventful. And then I think by the way, caveat is my life didn't depend on content creation, and for a lot of people that does happen. And so if that's the case, then you have to be obsessed around numbers.
What were you doing alongside?
I was working at a company called AngelList. I spent 3-4 years there.
Okay.
Very foundationally built my career in investing because of AngelList. And so this was maybe 10% of my time. So I could afford to not be obsessed by low growth. I could afford to not be bothered by it as much. And so it was a low-hanging fruit whenever I would get concerned. And then I would also know why I started. I think while content creation is extremely fancy from the outside, you will recognize that, hey, if you're starting for the wrong reasons and your fundamentals aren't clear, you probably, stay and go out after a year or two, right? Because you don't get success as easily, however may you define success. Yet, the reason I started was purely to learn. In every conversation today as well, the reason I do the podcast is because I'm learning, and I know there are enough people like me who want to learn. So if your fundamentals are somewhat right, I know that sounds super cliche, but is extremely important. You'll probably still get through the low points, which will be enough, but there are enough grades to compensate as well.
Thanks for sharing. You're also very early in your career, right? So hopefully you may not see so many dips. As Ayush, how's your experience been?
I think my experience has been, I've had my own mental health struggles while building Owl and the company that didn't work. As a creator, not so much, but most of my very close friends are actually all creators. I think 2-3 चीजें हैं जो बहुत ज़्यादा critical है. पहला तो being a creator, and especially a full-time creator, it's a very fickle career. You do like one thing or two things wrong, internet is very quick to cancel you. And so a lot of creators live in this fear that I may not be relevant as soon as tomorrow. So ho sakta hai kuch kal ho, something that happens tomorrow, and then I'm gone. By the way, I think that's not true, because a lot of the creators have a lot of skill. But that sense of that I can go from here to just here within a matter of like hours, that sense of anxiety is really, really bad. I think second is, when I was studying for IIT, I think that was a really tough phase of cracking IIT. But I would still compare myself to the 50 odd people in my classroom. So I would come 5th in my class, and I'll be like, that one person has more marks than me. That would build a lot of envy, but that's it. As a creator, you are exposed to data from people all over the world, not just people around you. So you are comparing your engagement, followers, likes to so many people. And you're like, oh, this person just came yesterday, but now has 1 million followers. I've been doing this for 5 years. So because the access to data is so public, you compare yourself on so many metrics, so many times, you're bound to feel terrible about yourself. So I think these two things ki kabhi bhi kuch bhi ho sakta hai. You can literally.
So what do you tell yourself in the moments of doubt?
I think personally speaking, and Zakir Khan put this in a very interesting way. Zakir Khan said that the reason he never felt, Zakir Khan is a huge comedian, right? For people who may not know, I think most of the people would know. He said that usko na life mein kabhi uncertainty lagi nahi, because he always had something to fall back on, just like Jivraj did on AngelList. He's like कि मैं बहुत अच्छा instrument he used to play, I'm forgetting the name. He's like, जब भी मेरा कोई show खराब होता था, मैं घर आके I used to make myself feel good कि oh, I'm so good at this. So I think humans are actually very simple. If you can make yourself feel good in a bubble, where you're good at something. So I would urge every creator to pick up a couple of crafts. It's a very simple jugaad solution that if you feel bad at something, make yourself feel artificially good by doing something that you're really, really good at. For me, I think being a creator never made me anxious because I would have a video which does not perform well, which is by the way happening to me in the last 4 weeks. I would come out and be like, oh, we hit our revenue goals this month. And I would feel good about myself. Or I did, 4 weeks of consistent gym. So I feel you have to create these artificial loops in your life, जिससे आपको अच्छा लगता रहे. And that's what I have done. I don't think it's, I don't know if it's a long-term solution, but it has worked for me the last 10 years.
So that's what matters the most.
Yeah.
Avanti, how about you?
I think when you're building anything, the two most important qualities are formidability and rejection resilience, right? If you hear about the entertainment industry and you think about film stars, you see all the people on the silver screen, but there's so many folks who didn't make it because you audition, get rejected, right? And that's what entertainment's like. That's what I've personally experienced, a lot of other people have, but it's about developing those tools and those, micro abilities to be resilient in those capacities because okay, fine. If I'm being rejected, is it about me or is it about the opportunity? Is it about the space? And being objective about the two. And I think the biggest thing that's helped me in being in the public space is recognizing that the person I am is very different from the persona. No matter how close I try to keep them to each other, a persona is a 2D representation of who I am at a static moment in time. And if someone has discovered you through a meme, someone's discovered you through whatever, I'm not even going into we've talked about hate and safety and cyber, all of that. But the person you are is a very whole, unique person with whether you would enjoy other crafts, you have people you care about, and that's really important to protect, right, for your own mental health. So for me, that means having a strong support system. I'm really grateful that family is that for me, but seeking out friendships and people. So I obviously have friends who are in these spaces, but majority of my close friends are not. Majority of my close friends are in very different spaces, very different backgrounds, care about very different things. And for me, that's my sacrosanct and really important because they know me as a human. And that's what matters at the end of the day, right? Because all of this can go on a poof. Like, does it matter? Not really at the end of the day, right? You're able to build $1 billion company. It can go in a poof. Does it matter? Yes, you've built value, all of that. But at the end of the day, who are you as a person? And that's really important to protect. And I do think I have an incredible therapist. And I think that's been a really useful tool for me to clarify, even if it's something as simple as clarifying interpersonal things in my life or the way I'm thinking about something or through overwhelm, having an objective space to process that. And of course, therapy is not a lot of people can afford that or access that. But whatever that space is for you, I think is really, really important because it keeps you grounded. For a lot of people, that might be a spiritual practice. That might be something else. Whatever it is, it's a craft, it's a spiritual practice, it's therapy, it's a community. Remembering what that is in the face of everything else because these journeys have so many ups and downs, right?
So I share from my experience, at least I have more experience than all of you, at least right now. I think being vulnerable, and I'll explain a bit, I think is the hardest thing to do. And that's what you don't realize early in your career, right? Being honestly talking about your failures and saying that why I failed and what really went wrong. Sometimes you make the mistake, sometimes the other person make the mistake. It's eventually going to happen in your journey, right?
For sure.
Correct.
So therefore, I think if you solve for the long term and saying I'm going to be vulnerable. If I blew $1 million in investing in sales and I didn't go well, I will talk about it. And if Ayush or Jivraj or Avanti is going to call me saying, Manav, you opened office in the US, what went right? If you see, the common thing is that you always try to perform. In a way, who we are in real life in actual home is different from when we go out, we put a performance at.
Correct.
You always want to say, oh, I went to the US, I stayed in New York City, I stayed in a cool hotel, or you will say, I stayed in a really small, I called a friend. You try to get a story out of it, right?
Yeah. Correct.
And you say, I did that and I did that, and you will say, by the way, I sold $100,000. You will not say that I invested $1 million. And by the way, people rejected me in the start.
Yeah.
And I built it like that. So speak about that in real time is really, really hard.
Yeah.
People speak about it when you have achieved success.
In hindsight.
In hindsight.
Because you've achieved success, so people are going to say, easy to talk about it, it's not has any impact on you, right? So being vulnerable in real time, or a girl or a boy rejects you in a relationship in real time, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about it with your parents, with whosoever you're very comfortable with, therapists or with your friends. It's extremely hard because everybody end up judging you. So I think if we can, the being vulnerable brings you out of the judgment loop.
Yeah.
Because judgment loop then starts putting you down. See, you feel bad because others are judging you. You anyway know your truth every day, right?
Correct.
You know what you're good at, what you have to work on, you know that, right? The reason you start feeling bad and affects your mental health is because the power of the whole, the burden of judgment starts playing on you. So when you become vulnerable, you actually start coming out of judgment loop.
Yeah.
So if you can come out of judgment loop, I think then your real skill set starts coming in.
Yeah.
Your real being and the performing being start becoming more closer and closer.
Yeah.
So I think that has made a lot of impact in my life. I've been very, very open about many, many things. I have not spoken in a public media, but with my friends and other way around. And that's how SaaS Movies also started.
Yeah.
We thought,
To
what is
create
the
a safe
difference?
space.
Safe
Yeah.
space.
It's not an event space. It's not even a safe space, by the way.
Okay.
So we said that we are 40 in a room. We talk about mistakes.
Yeah.
कि अगर मैं आज गया, in that time I was very successful in sales, but I'll share where I have been a failure. My first sales hire was a problem. It was not proper. I burned $250,000 way back when my revenue was $2 million, for example. So we said we're going to talk in context and we talk about where we actually failed. It was in a context setting, right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking larger life. I think if founders can come together or come with friends, family, and you talk about vulnerability in real time. Again, I'm specifying the real time.
Yeah.
When you're not being successful, that takes you out of the judgment loop.
Yeah.
And second, the point that you made, I think a fallback option.
Yeah.
So fallback option, second insight that I have is that how to think about the fallback option. So when I came from a very small town. When I started my business, I was earning $10,000 a month in my salary. I was a very good trader. And my parents were middle class. I didn't tell them I'm going to start a business, right? The only thing I had was that even if I fail, I'll go back to India and do a job, which will pay me at least 30,000, 40,000 rupees.
Yeah.
I came from a small town, it's okay. So I think how you think about fallback is really, really important.
Yeah.
Correct.
Everybody has a fallback, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not that we are humans, right?
Correct.
We are very resilient. We can do a lot of things. So
Yeah.
people again think about fallback from the context of the way people will judge you.
Yeah.
Like my friends will say, Manav, you're earning $10,000. Your boss is saying $1 million end of the year. Your fallback cannot be 30,000 rupees a month, right? It should be something else.
Correct.
So I went into the loop. I think I'm okay to fail. So what I'm saying is the insight is if you start by saying, I am going to get some kind of failure.
Downside is protected.
Yeah, you're basically building in your mental algorithm that
Absolutely.
failure is going to come.
Yeah.
So when failure hits you, it doesn't hit you that hard.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you are saying, okay, this is a fallback, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
A fallback could be living in a chamri or a shared accommodation with a friend from a villa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that depends on your mental length.
Yeah.
But it's a great topic. I'm going to do one session as a last session. I'm going to do on being vulnerable.
One thing I want to mention on that last bit is also what's worthy of mentioning is sometimes like creators live on a short-term dopamine hit, right? So you evaluate your success basis how
Based
your
on that,
immediate
yeah.
craft does. And it's worthy of mentioning that if you keep a long-term point of view to that, right? That if you don't evaluate yourself and your success basis how your immediate reel or piece of content does, that can be a very comforting factor.
But that also, we also go through it even when we are not creators,
Absolutely.
by the way.
Founders go through this massively.
And on a transaction basis.
Yeah.
I sent a proposal to Ayush and Ayush rejected, saying
Correct.
you didn't do a good job.
Your
And
deal
suddenly
didn't
my
go
revenue has
through.
come down.
Correct.
Or I want to hire Avanti and she rejected, saying I won't join your firm because you are so and so and I heard things. So I think on a transaction basis also we go through it, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Creator goes a bit more because they can see it in real time.
It's very real time
Yeah, real time,
feedback.
right? Here there's a bit of flag, right?
Correct.
So I think what I'm saying is if you build failure into algorithm,
Precisely.
that you're going to fail any which ways in some, and some will be
Be
success.
excited about it.
Yeah. And
Or
that's how-
dissociate from day-to-day results, I think.
Exactly.
Founders articulate this really well. I think
Yeah.
they have to fire like 100 people in a particular month and maybe raise 200 million in a particular month, yet they are just so focused on the 10-year journey that they probably don't
But that's not true. Most people are not. That's only, the stories that you hear. And that's what I'm trying to, through the podcast, I'm trying to talk about that myth. The reason a lot of founders go through massive mental health issue because
They do.
Because
Yeah.
true story nobody's telling.
Precisely.
Yeah. So true stories nobody's telling. So I'm going to do one session on being vulnerable in the end.
Yes.
To talk about the founders who have gone through. And you will see many successful founders have gone through that.
Yeah.
So success come only
The
with
most
that.
common thing on my podcast also that I hear is that, after years of success, what you've lost out on. In
Yeah.
fact, I had a post on this that was the most commonly post on the podcast, which I don't do as much. But it was what do you lose out on? Which is usually people, friends, family, mental health, physical health. Because you've spent 15 years doing things in the hustle of building, trying to be successful, yet you've lost out on a lot as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is...
I think you lose
must-
yourself in building the company, man. Forget about losing everybody else as well, right? You don't know who you are by the end of it because daily basis you are going so much of grind.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting topic. We'll speak more through one of them one of these days. But
Yes.
thank you very
so
much
for having us.
Thank
Manav.
you
so
I
much
really
for
enjoyed
having us.
chatting with you guys. Wish we can
Genuinely a
continue.
good conversation.
I would
Loved
love to have do more and more. But I'm really amazed at this whole creator economy. And I think people out there, big opportunity, provided you take it with a pinch of salt, some failures, some successes. But eventually, I think as India will have a great future to look at by million. And thank you, Suresh, for that for that tagline of million by million. We're going to talk more about it so that more impact can be created. So thank you
so
very
much.
much.
And make
Thanks,
sure you go
Manav.
check out Manav's other podcasts.
Yes.
Subscribe to his
Yes.
channel.
Yeah,
You know.